Dun, 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 dun. Welcome to Mormon Scoops, dun, 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 with your Mormon Scoops host, me, Carah Burrell, dun, 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 and your other Mormon Scoops co-host, John DeLynn.
Hi, guys.
And your other Mormon Scoops co-host, Gerardo Samano. Dun, 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 da, 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 da. Tonight's top stories for you from the world of Mormonism. We have the BYU Black Student Union confronts Brad Wilcox. We want to talk about what they said, what they didn't do, because there are some people speculating. We're going to get into that. BYU forces an end to gender-affirming voice care. We're going to talk about what that means, what it means for BYU's accreditation maybe in the future. And then we also have kind of a leaked video from a Kaysville, Utah devotional for sisters featuring Mormon apostle Elder Renlund, his wife, some other women that are in different leadership positions in the LDS church. We're going to talk about the good, the bad of the things they went into, show a couple clips, make it lighthearted, make it fun. So thanks everyone for joining us. Thank you to John. Thanks, Gerardo. And without further ado, let's get into it.
All right.
Everyone.
Hey, thanks, Carah. This is fun. We're trying this new setup. For those watching visually, we are trying to use our Studio 2, which we use traditionally to do in-person live Mormon Stories interviews. We're trying to do Mormon Scoops through our studio, and we've officially added Gerardo to our first presidency of Mormon Scoops. Gerardo.
Hey, John. Hey, Carah.
Your audio and lighting looks fantastic.
Thank you. I'm pretty excited of being here. I'm usually at home, my home studio. It's nice being in the Mormon Stories studio again.
Yeah, and I like the idea of a first presidency. And Carah, I think you're president. You're your prophet. You're president of our first presidency.
And that's why I get to dictate what the theme song is going to be.
Which is da 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 da.
I'm just trying to cut costs here at Mormon Stories. We don't need to hire any musicians. It's all right here.
And then Gerardo, you're first president. I'm gonna be the
counselor,
first counselor, and I'm gonna be second counselor. Is that okay?
Sounds good.
All right. Now that we've got the hierarchy established, what we're gonna do, we're just playing with different formatting. We're playing with different video and audio options. And we're trying out different things. And so what we're going to do today, also we're going to welcome Jen. Jen's behind the scenes, helping to moderate comments. Jen, we love you. She helps us in so many ways. Anyway, what we're going to do, we're going to start out before we hit the main stories. We have a feature that we're going to try and do called Kiddie Cones. That Carah, that was your name. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm just running with the Scoops theme. I'm like, Scoops, those are full grown adult, topics for the news story. And then if we just want to sprinkle in other things that's been happening in the news, those are the Kiddie Cones.
Those are the Kiddie Cones.
What do we got, John?
All right. So for our Kiddie Cones today, these are just a few news stories that we think are worth mentioning, at least briefly. The first one, Carah, you kind of felt like it was important to mention this, that Mormon missionaries have been evacuated from Ukraine. So Carah, why did you feel like that was, other than it being like the global news story of the world right now, why did you feel like that was important to mention?
Oh, I just wanted to see if it was something everyone else was interested in, if the missionaries are okay, and what the status of the church is in Ukraine. And so if you have anything you want to add to that, we're going to be highlighting comments throughout the program. I can throw your comment up there, even if it's not a super chat. So if you have any more information, maybe you know someone who is serving in Ukraine, we can throw that up there. And are we also making this a call-in show towards the end?
Well, that's a great point. We are. So we are going to be adding to the description a way to join us in StreamYard once we get to that point. So for those of you who want to join us, to add comments, to add criticisms, to add color, will be the second half of the show will be call-ins, video call-ins. So we look forward to that.
Yeah, everyone's really liked that. So I've loved it. All right, what else we got?
Okay. So yeah, not to be about this Ukraine thing, like, I don't know. I guess some people would say this is the type of, and our goal, I should say this, our tone goal, we got a lot of feedback on Mormon Scoops about tone. Some loved it, probably the vast, maybe 90%.
We did
said
a poll
they really loved it.
on
we
the
did
community
a poll
tab of YouTube. They said, we asked, was it too irreverent, not irreverent enough? And like 70% said just right amounts of spice. Some people wanted more spice, and only a few people said, "Ay, caliente." No, por favor.
Yeah, but also a lot, if I'm trying to dig down deep in my soul and make sure that Mormon Stories doesn't get lost in a chase for views or revenue or whatever. One of the hallmarks of Mormon Stories traditionally has been that we've tried to stay as neutral as possible. We've tried to stay respectful so that we don't operate in an echo chamber, and so that even faithful or Orthodox or believing members can feel, quote, safe enough, if they're at least questioning or courageous, can feel safe enough to listen. So that's where I think all three of us want to keep Mormon Stories and Mormon Scoops. Would you agree, Gerardo? Do you have thoughts about that?
No, I totally agree with it. Yeah, I think we add a lot of value to not only to our ex-Mormon community, but also to new people who might start listening to the program for the very first time. If we can just keep a balanced conversation.
Yeah. Carah, do you have anything to add?
No, I will therefore be not talking. Just kidding. Just kidding.
No, we love you for your what we promised each other we do off screen is if one of us gets too spicy, the other two are going to drop into devil's advocate kind of faithful mode and press the other one. Is that fair? Gerardo, you okay with that?
Yep, I love that.
And Carah?
Yeah.
All right.
I love putting
smack
on
back.
like my Mormon thinking cap and reverting to 3 years ago and being like, I actually believe something completely opposite. So any opportunity to fight with you, John, I'll take that.
Yeah. So with this Mormon missionary thing, I think that there might be some critics of the church or even progressive or post-Mormons that would say, man, wouldn't this be a good opportunity for a prophet, seer, revelator to kind of see ahead of a potential war? What do you guys think? Is that expecting too much? Is that unrealistic? Is that even relevant?
Actually, I was just thinking about so I was telling you earlier that my mission president, well, there was two messages combined today. As some of you know, my dad was called as a bishop recently, and he copied and pasted on our family group just kind of like a letter that he wrote to the word. And one of the points that he was mentioning, it's about the calamities that are going to happen before Jesus comes again. And I actually was just thinking how, I mean, so some of us, some ex-Mormons, including like people that are just experiencing a faith crisis, this might be kind of like even if they stop believing in the church, there's still some programming in our psyche about fear about like is it what if this is all true, and then that again got combined with a message that my mission president sent me. So I'm just thinking right now, is it something that we maybe would want to just talk about briefly, if some of our listeners are just feeling some, I don't know, PTSD about like things that are happening and how the church has talked about it, and used this rhetoric of war and rumors of war to incite fear in people. Does that make sense?
Let me see if I understand what you're saying. You're basically saying that if the New Testament mentions wars and rumors of
Right.
wars as a sign of the times,
Right.
that when a war actually starts to break out, people like Julie Rowe and end of timers, preppers, start feeling agitated that maybe we're getting close to the end.
Yeah, well, and then also, even like as ex-Mormon, personally as an ex-Mormon, and I don't believe in the church anymore. Obviously, like I don't believe the basic tenets of the church, but in some way, like psychologically, there's still some like little voice in my head, just reminding me about this stories that I was told when I was a believing member.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Huh. Carah, do you have anything to
about
response to
wars and
Gerardo?
rumors of wars?
Yeah.
That's kind of like the old like throw a dart at the wall and like you'll hit everything of like there's always wars going on.
Yeah,
There's always
that's true.
rumors of wars.
Yeah.
It's like if I had to write a prophecy that made me sound like a prophet, the number one I'd be like, people are gonna fight and not get along. Bingo. Prophecy fulfilled.
Humans will die, the sun will rise, the rooster
Yeah.
will crow.
Yeah.
Earthquakes and wars happen every year.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, you're right. It's so ubiquitous. What is there any value to it?
But then on the other side of it, same thing happened during COVID where people
Right.
were being called into areas that they would have to soon evacuate. and move around. So anyone who's been called to Ukraine in the last few months, it makes me wonder, was that actually like a prophetic calling of that's where God was trying to send them, if now they're being reassigned? And then further questions about, what is the prophet going to do? Are we going to have a fast? Are we going to send humanitarian aid?
Right.
But I was looking at like the faithful, tweets and subreddits, and some people think that this means that if Russia annexes Ukraine, oh gosh, that will fulfill a prophecy that Russia will one day have a temple. So
yeah, isn't that interesting how high demand religions sometimes use what's happening in the world, like COVID or war, and use it to instate fear on their members.
Yeah. I love a comment from one of our listeners. Yeah, it's Jonathan Sawyer. He writes, Gerardo, I grew up with the major end of the world rhetoric, so I hear what you're saying. Appreciate you bringing that up. So I think he's a Jehovah's Witness. So anyway, okay, well that's the first little kiddie cone. Is that what it's called, Carah?
Yeah.
Kiddie cone. The second is kind of
Trademark.
exciting. What's that? Trademark?
Do I need to trademark that?
Yeah, trademark that. All right. The second little bit of news is that there's a new movie or a series coming out on Hulu based on John Krakauer's book Under the Banner of Heaven, and it's going to be apparently starring Spider-Man himself, Andrew Garfield. And this is this book Under the Banner of Heaven is one that I read back when I had my faith crisis working at Microsoft. John Krakauer wrote Into Thin Air and Into the Wild, one book about climbing Mount Everest, one book about that kid that goes to Alaska, lives alone and ends up dying. But he also wrote this book called Under the Banner of Heaven. And I think it's about the Lafferty brothers and some murders that took place, I think including a pregnant woman getting killed. And it basically it talks about Joseph Smith and all his prophecies and polygamy and stuff. And then it talks about the implications of believing Joseph Smith's teachings and how some of these fundamentalist offshoots can end up doing some pretty horrific things in the name of Joseph Smith, like Warren Jeffs. And then it asks the question, what's the difference between Joseph Smith and Warren Jeffs or the Lafferty brothers? So we thought it would be fun to just go ahead and play the clip. It's a 1-minute clip. For those of you just listening on the Mormon Stories podcast feed, you'll have to bear with 1 minute of hearing the audio of this trailer, but not actually seeing it. So please forgive us for that.
The forward 15 second button is also at your disposal. We won't be offended.
Yeah, we won't. So here is the trailer to Under the Banner of Heaven.
This stays between us. This case I'm working on is a double murder. So far, what we've found isn't pointing outward. The evidence points to things and to beliefs that I have only ever heard whisperings about. I wonder how something so horrific could have come to pass.
It's also probably worth mentioning that Dustin Lance Black, I think, is involved in that movie. And I think he did the movie Milk about Harvey Milk. Anyway, people are kind of excited about that series. It's going to be on Hulu, I believe. And check it out when it airs. I think it's going to be epic. You guys have any reactions to that, Carah?
Yeah, it looks good. I don't watch anything except for Mormon Scoops every Thursday at 7 p.m. other than this programming, I think everyone should check out that one.
That's a good one. Gerardo, anything you want to add?
It was my first time watching it. It's pretty interesting. Now I'm
The
excited
trailer?
about it.
The
Yeah,
trailer?
yeah.
Yeah.
Now I'm excited about it. Pretty cool how they had a scene where they're blessing a baby.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Yeah, I think it looks like they're doing a scene of washing and anointings in the temple too.
Yeah.
So I wonder if it'll kind of be like showing the temple ceremony of it all.
It would,
What that will happen to.
yeah. It will be the teaser to the new Elder Bednar video of the temple ceremony.
Wow, the church's production quality is really upped. That's their new temple prep class. Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm
Right.
I want to read a comment from a viewer. Frederick Willis writes, "Hey friends, the episode that aired earlier today was the best Mormon Stories podcast episode I can recall in a long time. Really well done." What, Carah, do you want to
So
tell
good.
listeners and viewers what Frederick's talking about?
Sure. I was like trying to hype it up on all of the social media platforms too, because I think it's so important. From the moment they sat down, it was Cammie and Colby Reddish, who are a couple from an Idaho ward who were faithful, believing Latter-day Saints up until just a few, I would say even weeks ago, maybe months ago, just blessed their oldest child. Very faithful, believing people with a concern for children. And when they found out that their bishop had been removed as a serving bishop with no thank you, that people started to talk in the ward, and it turns out that he was a, trigger warning, a child molester. And the ward and the state kept it very, very hush hush. And as they were trying to say, can we acknowledge this? Can we talk about this? Can we see if there's any other victims in the ward? Their stake president and the different leaders in the ward really shut down any kind of talk or discussion while they were just trying to have the children of the stake's best interest at heart. So it's a really heartbreaking story of a couple who are trying to do their best by the children in their stake and being thwarted from different ward members, being told some of the worst things about their intentions when they were trying to do their best. So it's a really good inside look at how systemic problems are really, really tough for people to, at a ward level, address without higher people in leadership wanting to come to the table and reform things. And so, and then part 2 is going to air tomorrow about what that did to their faith and their faith journey from that point on.
Yeah.
So it's a really, really important one that looks in like to the conformity to like the authority and the leadership and the patriarchy. I can't recommend it highly enough.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks to those who called that out and are expressing support. We are proud of that episode. Gerardo?
I watched it the other night, and I kept messaging John about it, saying like, "Oh, my jaw kept dropping. It was insane. What was like the story of what was going on?"
Yeah, the part where the stake president testifies to
Right.
the person complaining about the bishop being called as a child sexual abuser, and the stake president saying, "I have a testimony that God
Yeah.
told me to call him as bishop, even though he was a child molester."
Yeah. Yeah.
He bore witness of that.
Yeah. I was telling you, well, because the problem is that he doesn't only throw himself under the bus, he would throw the whole first presidency under the bus. Because I was telling you
Yeah.
that, well, first of all, stake presidency usually don't work the same as bishops. Usually, the two counselors in most decisions, especially big ones like calling a bishop, have almost the same voice and power as the stake
They
president.
have veto rights.
Right, right. So they would all have to be in agreement. So you would have to say that 3 stake presidency members were wrong about this, and then once they decide on the name, they send it to the first presidency, and the first presidency prays on the name, and then they send a response. I was telling John that it's not uncommon for the first presidency to reject names. Like, I know my dad told us several times when he was in the stake presidency that he had several names rejected by the first presidency to become bishops. So the fact that the first presidency prays over the name, and they called a child molester, that's pretty shocking.
Right.
Anyway.
What's not shocking is that Larry Davidson says Gerardo has the best hair in Mormonism, and I will fight anyone who disagrees. So thanks,
Larry.
Larry, for that support of Gerardo.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, it's really, Mormons keep throwing God under the bus. So
Yeah.
God is going to call a child molester
Yeah.
as a bishop
Yeah.
for his wise purposes. Yeah. Mormons, please try to stop throwing God under the bus. It really ruins God for so many people. That's why over half of ex-Mormons become atheists or agnostics, because I think the Mormon God ends up being kind of a jerk. Carah, am I being too harsh?
You're not representing my atheism. Maybe somebody else. I was in love with Jesus. I was like, whatever the Mormon God is, that is this kind of like D-bag. I'm fine. Some people can worship him. I never did worship that guy. I was like, our leaders are very much imperfect. My lack of God belief comes from a different source.
Okay. All right. Well, our next kitty cone is a note from the field. So one of the things I love most about our job is that we get tips from people out in the field. And so one of the features of our kitty cones is going to be just sharing some of these tips. And I got a really cool tip from someone outside of Utah that apparently is in the same ward as a daughter of a current Mormon apostle and a son-in-law. And this viewer listener wanted to share the following. He wrote to me, John, we've recently had 3 missionaries come home early. Leaders in the ward and stake of those missionaries claim it was for mental health reasons. I personally know the families, and they have told me the real reason these missionaries came home early was because they no longer believed in the church. For those of us who really suffer a mental health condition, this is insulting. Quote, let's blame anxiety and depression instead of addressing the real issues. I think this is referring to our last Mormon Scoops about the insider who leaked to us that like a third of the missionaries in his stake are coming home early. So this is someone who's saying, his ward is reflecting the same sort of missionary attrition. Anything you guys have to say about blaming missionaries losing their testimony on anxiety and depression?
I mean, it could. I mean, a faith crisis can definitely trigger
I was about to say,
depression and anxiety.
Living with cognitive dissonance would definitely, trigger all of that as well. But yeah, that just shows that they'll never actually be able to say how many people are in faith crisis.
Yeah.
They want to sweep that under the rug. They want to blame it on anything but that people are having a problem with the truth claims of the church. It's the last thing that they actually really want to acknowledge on a wide stage, I think.
In reality, Mormon theology doesn't really allow for the loss of faith or loss of a testimony based on facts.
Right.
And my mission president reminded me of that. Like basically his message was so what happened, I finally responded to one of his posts on the mission Facebook group. And I just posted kind of like my main reasons why I stopped believing. So his response to me was like, basically none of those are valid because you had a testimony and you felt the spirit and blah, blah, blah. So I mean, I kind of understand why they would say that faith crises are not a real reason to lose faith or information are not real reasons because, I mean, they believe that feelings are way more important than facts.
Right.
Yeah, and it says a lot if somebody is like completely enveloped in the service of the Lord and you're doing nothing but you're a missionary and you're probably not out sinning in the world. You're like you've got the mantle of being a missionary for the Lord. If that sends a really bad signal to people around that if somebody is doing the work of the Lord and they still are just like, I cannot with these truth claims anymore. I cannot teach something I do not believe in out of my own conscience. Like if somebody that just seems like it would be an obvious sign of somebody being very consistent with their values and not the opposite, as opposed to somebody who's just like a high school student that chooses to fall away from the church or something,
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Well, if that weren't cool enough, there's more. So this tipster wrote in, another thing is that in our ward, there's a couple, they are empty nesters, and she is the daughter of a current apostle. Neither of them have held recommends for some time. The couple, not the apostle father. So, I mean, that they're basically saying that at least one daughter and son-in-law of a current Mormon apostle is at least not holding a temple recommend or probably not believing or worthy, one of the two. Goes on to write, I heard with my own ears the son claim that the change to eliminate, I'm assuming this is the son-in-law. The son-in-law claimed that the change to eliminate the use of Mormon was an attempt to rebrand the church as there is too much negative association with the term Mormon. He said that his father-in-law, the current apostle, basically confirmed this when confronted about the change. He says, I don't want to give too much information, but his family are very well known and have donated a lot to the church. I don't know if we can guess who that would be, but it continues.
Name a wealthy Mormon family.
Apostle, right? Then it goes on. This occurred in an elders quorum meeting with the week after the announcement, and I have only seen him at church maybe 2 times since then. Just a few FYIs for you, coming from an active but non-believer. Also, this is not in Utah. So, we've theorized on Mormon Stories that, the podcast MormonStories, Mormon Think, so many different social media platforms or podcasts or websites have kind of come to dominate the use of the term Mormon in search engine optimization or SEO. So the church got tired of losing the SEO battle to the word Mormon. Plus, I think that they did polling and just found that the term Mormon is really unpopular, that Mormons are generally unpopular. So this is basically someone confirming through an apostle that they literally abandoned the term, not because it's a victory for Satan, but because of marketing and branding reasons. Is that a surprise? Not a surprise?
Not a surprise.
Not a surprise.
Okay. All right.
Well,
Nice
and then also
confirmation.
we should say, we know that President Nelson has had this idea of the name of the church, not being Mormon for a long, long time. So
it's been a pet peeve.
Yeah.
When he got into power.
Yep.
And Wendy Nelson's like, this has been on his mind for a long time. And he's like, quiet. It's supposed to be a revelation.
Correct.
Yeah. All right. Well, I love to get confirmation of our theories sometimes. The next one quickly, the next kitty cone is another note from the field. This is one that I got directly. I spoke to someone who has been directly involved in providing mortgages to Mormon First Presidency members and or apostles. And the intelligence that I got from them was that Mormon apostles are reported to make around $300K a year in total income, because they had to determine average annual income to be able to assess what the mortgage, to be able to help an apostle qualify for a loan. So, you hear that a lot. We know that like rank and file general authorities make at least $120K just in salary, not to mention benefits.
Well, and that was like years ago.
That was years ago.
Right?
Yeah. And now we're hearing, and this is alleged, this is reported, this is not confirmed. For those of you who want to know what Mormon apostles make, we're getting reports that it's at least around $300K, and that's not counting the $1 million signing bonus that allegedly or reportedly through Grant Palmer and his sources, which was an emeritus first Quorum of the 70 presidency member who passed away recently. We're told that Mormon apostles get $1 million signing bonus when they become apostles. Did you know that, Carah?
I didn't know that. Do you guys think that's too much or too little for people like Holland who are sifting the wheat from the tares with his musket talk? Like,
Carah's throwing it down. Carah just threw down.
Yeah, that's some hard work. Sifting the wheat from the tares. That's a manual labor.
But I've heard about a lot of believing Mormons say that a lot of these apostles had careers, right? Like before, and were really successful, and they're entitled to that generous stipend. Or
No, I mean, if you look at it from a corporate perspective, this is a $300-400 billion corporation, and it's literally a corporation.
Yep.
And the CEOs or the C-level executives of any $300-400 billion corporation are going to make a lot more than that. So you could probably argue from a corporation standpoint that they're underpaid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
I was just going to say, somebody said maybe it's, dirty silence money. Do you think that people become church broke at a certain point and they rely on the church's income and then they can't, stand up against the authority? Because at some point you become so ingratiated into this, like the upper echelons of the church, that if that is now your income source, you're not going to do anything to speak out against problematic things that you see. Whereas maybe if it was, you had a chance to get out of it, there's no such thing as like saying, I don't agree with somebody else in the quorum and then being ousted. Like, it really adds to this whole problem of like the authoritarianism of the top echelons of the church. I would argue that just adding kind of money into it makes you wonder if change will ever actually occur.
And then there's also I don't know why in Latin America, in Mexico, I always heard this theory, or not theory. We were taught about this as a fact. And in fact, my dad just confirmed this just recently, that general authorities that are paid like apostles, when they get called as apostles, they surrender all their assets and put them in the name of the church. and then after that, they start getting kind of like a monthly stipend. I mean, we know that's not true at all, because Stevenson, he holds businesses, and now they're breaking the policy and letting him hold assets in a company. So we know it's not true, but I don't know why that goes around in Latin America a lot.
I mean, I think it would be great if the church could just be transparent in its finances.
Yeah.
And just be open and honest about it. But yeah, Grant Palmer mentioned that term church broke, which meant that they were so beholden to the church at the point of becoming an apostle, they could never leave it or become whistleblowers, because their income and pensions just would all be at stake. I think that if we look at it from a corporate perspective, maybe they're underpaid. But if we look at it like from a New Testament perspective, didn't Jesus say to his apostles, like, sell everything and just, follow me and take no thought for the morrow kind of stuff? So it seems inconsistent with what Jesus told
it
his
seems
apostles.
Like we want to compare the apostles to the scripture apostles, whenever the scripture apostles made mistakes, and say, hey, look at Peter, he made a mistake, and so our apostles can make mistakes, but they don't want to compare them when it comes to like how they lived.
Without person script, right?
Right.
Yeah. All right. I think the last mini scoop we have is just for you guys to know that there's a new conference coming up February 26th, Saturday, 2 to 6 p.m. called Rescuing the Restoration. And if you actually look at who's attending, it's people like Matt Lohmeyer, who we've had on MormonStories, Denver Snuffer. It's kind of like the resurrection of the prepper vibe. And so Carah, you said you'd love to attend that.
I would. I went to the Book of Mormon Evidence Conference, and I would love to go to any place and just talk to anybody.
What do you guys think about the restoration needing a restoration? Like, was
saving? It needs saving, right? Isn't that what it's called? What's it called?
It's called rescuing the rescuer. Like, it's for me. I'll just say this. For me, it was hard enough to think that God was the all-powerful, all omniscient being. He sets up his one true church with Jesus, and then it immediately falls into apostasy for another 1800 years. And then when it gets restored, it's restored to this really obscure church in upstate New York. And for then another 150 years, it has to fight and bleed and suffer just to reach like 5 or 6 million active members. And then according to Snufferites and preppers, it again falls into apostasy and needs to be restored again by like a bearded lawyer from Sandy named Denver Snuffer and a prepper woman who's been excommunicated. It's just at some point, like, it makes God look foolish. I think that's how I see it.
Yeah. I think a lot of members of the the church would agree that it's kind of foolish.
Yeah. Carah, foolish, not foolish?
I wasn't paying attention. I was reading the website because I wanted the listeners to actually know what we're describing.
She's buying a ticket.
I'm buying a ticket. Click. Can I have your credit card? Click. And yeah, because if you go to the website, it says, "Are you concerned about the direction the church is taking? Your church is taking? Is your religion changing so rapidly it's becoming unrecognizable?"
Wow.
And they're talking about in the smallest of like progressive, like teeny tiny little like left areas. They're not saying, "Is it unrecognizable?" like oh my gosh, is it? Anyway, that's just kind of funny. So they're saying it's just unrecognizable. Do with you will with that.
I mean, it's true. Would Joseph Smith recognize and endorse the modern Mormon church? Maybe he would.
Probably not.
He'd probably love how rich it was and powerful.
Yeah.
I mean, not to be cynical, but like, who doesn't love being rich and powerful? I mean, some people might not, but anyway, I guess the one thing is worth noting is just that report again from the last Mormon Scoops, where it was reported that the preppers and the anti-vaxxers and the Trumpers,
some factions of some of that.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure.
Yeah.
We don't think that everybody, these are generalizations because there's factions within them that are kind of grouped. Kenny.
That basically politically conservative or religious fundamentalist disaffection far outweighs disaffection for truth claims or LGBT issues or women's issues, those sort of things. So I imagine this conference is going to be well attended.
Yeah.
So viewers, listeners, please, if any of you are inclined, where is this conference? I'm guessing it's in Rexburg, but
no, it's in
where is it, Kara?
Oh, it is. It's in Meridian, Idaho.
It's in Meridian, Idaho. I think that's Boise.
Yeah,
I
Boise.
think that's Boise area.
Mhm.
So if any of you are near Boise, Saturday, February 26th, please go there, attend the conference, record it all, send us the recordings. We want to know what's being said at this conference and let us know what's interesting. Is that all right?
Yeah.
Okay, now it is time for the main event, the main topics for today. And the first topic is the BYU Black Student Union confronts Brad Wilcox. And we even have a photo here. Kara, this is kind of your story. Do you want to lead us through it a little bit and let us know what's going on and what you think?
Yeah, this photo popped up on Reddit, and I can't see the name of the Redditor because it's too small on my screen.
It is Master Mayhan Jr.
I just want to give a shout out to the Redditor that posted this photo. And yeah, if you want to go to
describe the photo for those who are
you
listening.
can't see it, it is Brad Wilcox looking very shaken.
In a mask,
in
right?
a mask in front of his, what do you call it? Classroom, basically outside his classroom, holding a walkie-talkie with two members of the BYU's Black Student Union. One's wearing like a beret, and they're all dressed. Oh, actually, they both are dressed all in black.
Yeah, and the berets are significant. I'm old enough to remember the Black Power movement of the 60s and 70s, and the Black Panthers and that sort of thing. And the beret is a symbol of Black Power. So the fact that the Black Student Union at BYU is kind of organizing, wearing apparel that harkens back to the Black Power movement, the Black Panther movement, and that they're starting to organize. And there's an amazing TikTok channel. I wish I had the name.
The Black Menaces.
The Black Menaces, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Shout out to the Black Menaces TikTok channel. And I think they probably have an Instagram channel. But we're cheering them on, and please support them. Maybe in the show notes we can include links.
Yeah, definitely.
To their pages.
Yeah.
Hey, so what else did you want to say, Kara, about?
And then if you want to just go to the video, I thought who better than, I think it's the president of the Black Student Union. His name is Nate. We can just play the video of them talking about their confrontation with Brad Wilcox.
I love it. Here you go.
Do it in Nate's words.
Nate Bird, is that right? That's what you have on the slide, Nate Bird.
Yep.
Okay.
So today, members of the Black Student Union dressed up in all black, and we, to represent solidarity. And we went down to Brad Wilcox's class in the Jesse Knight building. When we got there, we were met with security outside of his classroom door. We just wanted to go inside and sit down and kind of start a dialogue with him. But we were met with security at the door. And so we waited outside for his class to be over. So in total, we were there for, about an hour and a half, 2 hours, waiting for his class to be done. We were in the hallway, and we talked with a gentleman who is Brad's boss. His first name is Sean. I forget his last name at the moment. I think it might be Hopkins. But we talked with him in the hallway. We voiced some of our concerns, some of our frustrations, and we also expressed that we were just there to have a dialogue, to talk with Brother Wilcox, and to help him understand some of the impact of his actions on his class at the end. Although he was very nervous and very worried about what we were going to do, I suppose, we were able to talk with him and communicate with him that we just wanted to sit down and meet. He wasn't comfortable meeting at the time because he didn't want any of his words to be misconstrued. And so we sent him an email, and he and his office did respond, letting us know that they would get back to us with the time that we could meet. And so we are currently waiting to hear back from them about that. But there have been some rumors going around online from clearly prejudiced or racist individuals, whether they're consciously racist or unconsciously racist, doesn't matter. They have said that we were there trying to force our way in, or that we were, they have this perception that we were there in violence or in, high energy, high emotions, what have you. But we were waiting calmly outside the door. We did not cause any disturbance. And anyone who was there can vouch for that. So before you believe what you see on the internet from prejudiced, racist individuals, please know that we did what we were supposed to do, and we did what Black people in this country have been doing for decades.
Hi, Kara. What are your initial reactions to that video?
My first instinct was to think about how like historically the way that Black people, when they're asking for any kind of equality, something as simple as, can we talk to you about that really racist thing? If you guys don't know, we obviously did an episode about it. It was all over the internet a couple weeks ago about Brad Wilcox saying, like, instead of saying, why didn't Blacks have the priesthood? Why don't we ask a different question? Why did the whites not get it until such and such year? And something that obviously, like, Black Latter-day Saints should be able to talk to their leaders about and have an actual honest dialogue, and kind of root out racism, even up to a systemic level, of somebody who holds such a high leadership calling and is a professor at BYU. So, like, super huge thumbs up and kudos to, yeah, like you just said, like Nate said at the end of the video, doing what Black people have historically done is trying to fight for their rights and having equality when it comes down to just the basic institution that they're trying to get an education from, and making themselves feel safe. And while I think that's a great thing, it's unfortunate if people want, like you said, we're starting to create rumors and circulate things that come from a very, like, old, long time established racist narrative, that people just trying to fight for their rights are inherently, they're violent, they're pushy, and that wasn't the case at all. And so I'm glad that he was able to speak to that.
I thought I read somewhere that they notified Brad ahead of time that they would be appearing at the classroom to do so peaceably, just to dialogue. And the fact that security was called in response to them being notified that their intent was to have a peaceful conversation, for some was offensive, because it was almost like, well, if people of color are going to come talk, then they must be, have, like you said, have violent intentions. And so we got to call security.
Yeah.
Did you hear that? Did you hear that?
I didn't hear that necessarily. No,
Okay,
but
that's fine.
is it okay if I highlight one comment real quick?
Yeah.
Mo said, if Wilcox wants to talk about the issues, why is he so scared to talk about the issues? And Black people in this country, people who have always been marginalized, they have to be the ones who are always having to talk about the issue that they don't actually want to talk about. So Brad's the one who wanted to bring up the issue about, like, the priesthood and the way that Black people have been marginalized. And if Brad wasn't going to be able to do it in a kind, well-rounded manner and actually respect people, then I think it is within the rights of people to, show up to his classroom and say, hey, this issue affects us in every way possible, and let's have a little discussion about it. So I think they did an incredibly brave thing and should not have any kind of negative consequences from it. That's my opinion. So.
Yeah. A couple really good comments. One viewer writes, point of comparison, I'm white, and when I was at BYU, I occasionally popped in on classes to sit with friends to see if I wanted to take a class, and I never had security stop me from entering. That's a good point. And then Keiko's confirming, Keiko Narita Music, yeah, security was called, and that was upsetting to hear. Gerardo, did you want to add anything to that?
No, I think the video speaks for itself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Carah, you had another slide that you included. Do you want to read it and talk about why you thought that was significant?
Yeah, I'm just trying to, pass the mic to people that are actually in this community. So this is on Reddit. I hope she doesn't mind that I'm sharing. This is from a girl named Taylor that said, I'm still reeling from the effects of knowing that in preparation for a group of the Blacks coming to have dialogue, that security was called as a preparation at BYU. We are seen as inherently violent. I'm tired, written in all caps. Glad that they can protect one professor, but not students.
And that's the dictatorship, or Taylor Munlin, right?
Yeah. So I don't know what the experience is to be Black. So I just wanted to give as many people that are actually affected by Brad's words the mic that we can. So also, we're going to try and make this a call-in show. If you're personally affected by the things that Brad said, whether because of the color of your skin or anything else, let's try to add some more comments to the end of the show.
And
So
if any of you know any of the students from the Black Student Union at BYU, we should reach out and see if any of them are. I mean, honestly, I wanted to reach out to them and invite them on MormonStories podcast. I guess I'd be
I have
worried.
some things in the works.
Okay,
don't you worry.
I was worried that the BYU could kick them out of the university if they came on the podcast. But anyway, well, if any of you are part of the Black Student Union or are students of color at BYU, or you know someone who is, and you think that there might be anyone who wants to come on Mormon Stories, and or it's safe to do so, We'd love to hear from you at MormonStories@gmail.com. And Carah says she's got something in the works.
Yeah.
All
And you
right.
have our love and support.
Yeah, huge shout out of support to the Black Student Union and to, what's the name of the Instagram TikTok channel again? Black Menaces.
Yeah, the Black Medicines on TikTok.
All right.
Hilarious.
Sending
And a
our
little bit
support.
sad as well, but they make some good content.
Okay, the next topic for today is BYU forces end to gender-affirming voice care for transgender students. And this has been a big story in the news the past week or two.
Yeah.
It's been covered in Q Salt Lake magazine and in the Salt Lake Tribune. I'm not sure if the Deseret News covered it.
No,
Gerardo, you didn't see it covered?
they did not,
That's interesting.
as far as I know.
Yeah. So I'll just give kind of a rundown. The BYU has a Department of Communication Disorders, and they have a speech and language clinic. And the way these clinics work, I worked in a clinic when I was getting my psychology doctorate. These clinics provide a community service to students and members of the community at a discounted rate. And what you get in return for your discounted payment or free payment is you're supporting the training of new graduate students. And so there are these speech and language pathologists at BYU, bachelor and master's level students that are training to become speech and language pathologists. And they work in this clinic and they're supervised by professors that are speech language pathologists. So that's how universities train new professionals. So BYU, their speech and language, their Department of Communication Disorders and the Speech and Language Clinic has been providing gender-affirming voice care to at least 3 transgender students at BYU recently. These services are considered vital to the health and well-being of transgender individuals. I'm not in any way an expert on transgender experience, but when there's this idea of passing that's often discussed, which is if you're a trans female, for example, oftentimes your goal is to be able to pass as a non-transgender female, and that would be both in your appearance and in your voice. And so voice becomes a very important part of your transition, and that would be the same thing for a trans male. And so we all know that both whether it's transitioning or sometimes surgeries that may be involved, and of course this type of voice therapy is associated with decreased anxiety, decreased depression, positive mental health. These are all just very important parts of supporting someone's transition, and they're considered to be vital. And of course, if you are going to become a speech and language pathologist out in the world, being able to provide these types of services to transgender individuals is one of the basic forms of speech and language pathology service that these professionals will provide. So to continue the story, recently, out of the blue, the BYU administration decided to cancel these gender-affirming voice care services to these 3 transgender students. A spokesperson for BYU said that the students were made aware of other providers, and I think 2 local providers include the University of Utah, Go Utes, and Rocky Mountain University, and that the BYU offered to assist with the coordination between students and providers. I have it from a source close to this department that students and faculty were incredibly upset. They were so upset that for at least one full day, courses had to be canceled in the Department of Communication Disorders because the students were upset and the faculty were upset, and everybody was just disturbed by this change. It is not known where the original complaint came from. Was it a graduate student that was a faithful Orthodox graduate student that was offended or disturbed that they had to provide speech and language?
Yeah, because these things
services?
are supposed to be confidential, right?
Yeah, exactly. So
Like the transgender students are not out as transgender.
right, it's a violation of the HIPAA confidentiality that it's disclosed
Yeah.
what a client would be
So
receiving
even the
services
university
for.
finding out, it's a problem.
It's a violation of HIPAA laws, from what I understand.
Yeah.
Great point, Gerardo. So it's not known where the original complaint came from. Was it one of the graduate students or undergraduate students there? Was it a faculty member that was bothered? Who knows? Was it someone from the student body? It is assumed that the decision ultimately to cancel services was approved by Kevin Worthen, the president of BYU. I don't have a confirmation about that. It's not known whether the board of directors or even the Quorum of the 12 Apostles were aware that this decision was made. I am told that the department is almost unanimously in support of providing these services, and that the vast majority of the faculty in this department are outraged. I understand that some might even be considering, resigning or transferring to other universities. I don't have confirmation of that, but that's a question. I think that's probably a safe assumption to make. And then there's a really, it's worth mentioning kind of what the Mormon Church's policy is with reference to transgender individuals. The family proclamation to the world says that gender is an essential characteristic of individual, premortal, mortal, and eternal identity and purpose. So somehow some people interpret that to mean that a person who was assigned female at birth can't transition to male or vice versa.
Elder Oaks clarified, said that that's the interpretation on General Conference.
But the proclamation doesn't specifically say that.
No.
So that was an oversight in the revelation, if it was a revelation at all.
Well, Elder Oaks received the revelation, right?
Which we know these days can be rescinded, like the November 2015 policy.
Correct.
So, and even the proclamation on the family hasn't been canonized yet.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of apostles I hear that aren't in support of it being canonized. So this is always messy, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Today's revelation is tomorrow's antiquated opinion, policy, right?
Yeah.
Something cultural
theories advanced in the past.
Yeah, folklore, whatever it is. Anyway, the church does counsel against sex reassignment surgery. The church also counsels against social transitioning, and the church defines social transitioning as changing dress or grooming, or changing a name or pronouns to present oneself as other than his or her biological sex at birth. It is worth mentioning that speech therapy is not expressly listed at this time as part of the handbook's description on transitioning. So I would expect an update to the church handbook of instructions someday to include now speech therapy.
And this is all new from what I remember, right?
Yeah,
this is a 2020 update.
Yeah, that's right. 2022 update, right? Or 2021.
Yeah.
Pretty recent. Yeah. And then the church does not grant exceptions. The church does. This is also a contradiction, because the church does grant exceptions for transgender individuals to receive hormone therapy if it is prescribed by a physician to ease gender dysphoria or reduce suicidal thoughts. So we'll get to that contradiction later. Why are you laughing?
Isn't there like a study that's been done that like the number one way for people to not have suicidal ideation is to have all of those things that conform with their gender identity?
Yeah.
And so it's just like, okay, everyone through the door.
and it's weird that the church the church has a policy which allows for
exemption,
some hormone therapy, but not surgery. But it doesn't say anything about speech services. But now
But you would assume speech therapy is not in the level of hormone therapy, right?
Yeah, but somehow it's forbidden. So this is all really a cluster. What's the word, Carah? Cluster fudge? Is that the Mormon equivalent? Cluster fudge.
Oh, that's a new item on our Mormon scoops. The cluster fudge topping.
Cluster fudge topping. Yeah, on this Sunday. Anyway, but the last thing worth mentioning is that a transgender Mormon can face church discipline. So to add to the confusion, a transgender Mormon can face church discipline for transitioning. And I'm assuming they mean for sex reassignment surgery, but I don't know. Anyway, it's a mess. And it's just so it's so disheartening that these are among our most vulnerable. If you think about Jesus and what he cared about, these are among our most vulnerable humans right now in 2022.
Yeah.
And the church has to, like, if we ever had a call for a prophet, seer, and revelator, seeing ahead of time and coming up with a policy that would be really, if we could have a clear, succinct, powerful policy that was compassionate towards a very vulnerable population. If ever there was a call for a prophet, a need for a prophet, seer, and revelator, this would be the time. But instead, we have just a very confusing, disheartening, and disturbing set of policies and procedures, and
Yeah.
it's really disheartening. Anyway,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. What were you going to say? Something?
When you're finished, I have something to say.
Go ahead.
I wanted to move to a new segment I just invented just now. Is that okay?
Well,
That we
we're
do right
not
in the
going.
middle
There's still more on this topic.
on the trans thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Finish up this. I
Okay.
have a segment I just wanted to invent.
No. Okay. So if we continue, we read from the BYU Communication Disorders Department that their department is certified by the American Speech Language Hearing Association, or ASHA. And the big news that we wanted to cover today is that ASHA, which is the association that sort of endorses all speech and language pathologists, they issued a specific statement on BYU's decision.
Yeah.
So this national body, this national certification or endorsing, organization issues a policy, and we're just going to read it because it's really powerful. So they issued this February 11th, 2022.
They issued a statement.
A statement. What did I say?
Policy.
A statement. Sorry. Thank you, Gerardo. And the statement reads, this is called the ASHA Statement on Brigham Young University Administration Decision to Deny Speech Services for Transgender Clients. We're going to read the whole thing. So from Rockville, Maryland, the decision by Brigham Young University Administration to require their Department of Communication Disorders to end all voice and communication services at its speech and language clinic for transgender clients is in direct opposition to practice expected of American Speech Language Hearing Association members, or ASHA, and contrary to the ASHA Code of Ethics to 2016. ASHA recognizes gender-affirming voice and communication services for transgender and gender-diverse populations within the speech-language pathology scope of practice. ASHA members provide vital clinical services to gender-diverse populations who may have voice or other speech language disorders unrelated to their gender, as well as services to individuals whose voices do not reflect their gender. Transgender individuals who attempt to modify their voice without a trained speech language pathologist risk permanent damage to their vocal cords, and without appropriate services are at increased risk for related mental health challenges. Ensuring treatment for all individuals in need of speech language hearing and related services, including transgender individuals, is consistent with ASHA's Code of Ethics. Principle 1, Rule C of the ASHA Code of Ethics states the following, quote, individuals shall not discriminate in the delivery of professional services or in the conduct of research and scholarly activities on the basis of race, ethnicity, sex, gender identity, gender expression, sexual orientation, age, religion, national origin, disability, culture, language, or dialect. Therefore, BYU is putting its certified speech language pathologists in an untenable position. These employees are now being directed to act in a manner contrary to their responsibilities under the ASHA Code of Ethics. So basically, BYU is asking their professors in this department to violate their own code of ethics by discriminating against transgender students. Carah.
Yeah.
And the students who are going to receive a degree based on the certification.
Right.
Be less apt to help people in their actual career moving forward because of the school that they chose.
Right.
Yeah.
Is it Chris? That's a great spelling. Wrote, I think it's important to note that this was an administrative decision and not a clinical decision. So upsetting. Administration usurping clinical.
Yeah, and this ties to Natasha Elfer Parker's experience, where she's like a marriage and family therapist. She is a licensed sex therapist. She's giving, empirically supported recommendations to Mormons and to the Mormon church publicly, and the church excommunicates her. You know what I mean? Yeah. So thank you, Chris, and Carah for that. We'll go on to keep reading. So Asha strongly believes the principles set forth in the Code of Ethics, including Principle and Rule C, are considered essential to the practice of speech-language pathology. BYU's decision can in no way be supported or justified by the Asha Code of Ethics. There are areas of concern to be addressed. For the university to take such action, the transgender client's protected health information would have been provided to the BYU administration, which, Gerardo, to your point, is a violation of the HIPAA privacy rule. The rule requires appropriate safeguards to protect the privacy of protected health information and sets limits and conditions on the uses and disclosures that may be made of such information without an individual's authorization. I mean, I guess these students would have a right to sue BYU or its administrators on a HIPAA violation.
I was talking to a lawyer just earlier before we started this episode who it sounds like it's a very gray area that hasn't really been challenged on the courts. So I mean, I think you're going to talk about this later.
Yeah.
But I mean, Asha is already pointing out the major issues that BYU could really get in trouble if these students decide to either file a complaint or a suit.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. This goes on to say, this is an interesting part. Asha is reminding the LDS Church how this change violates its own policies and procedures. So
wow.
That's kind of cool. So they go on to write, BYU's decision does not align with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints' policies and guidelines. According to section 38.6.23 of the General Handbook,
Wow.
Serving in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, quote, transgender individuals face complex challenges. Members and non-members who identify as transgender and their family and friends should be treated with sensitivity, kindness, compassion, and an abundance of Christ-like love.
Wow.
Whoa.
What do you think? What do you think about
Throwing
that?
it down.
That's crazy. I mean, they're quoting
The church's own policy.
Yeah. Well, and the handbook of instructions, you
Yeah.
know, like that's a big deal.
Well, why are you laughing, Carah, or smiling?
Because it is like the ultimate courtroom at the end with like a special witness that comes in and busts open the doors, and it's like the church's own handbook is here to tell you, and then we're like judge, jury, off to prison. Just like this feels like case closed. Like your own church, not only is it not ethical and not smart and none of the things that we stand for you to be able to get this accreditation, it's also against your own policy to do this.
Yeah, because
case closed.
I mean, it's worth asking, like, was this, were these transgender BYU students treated with sensitivity, kindness, compassion, and abundance of Christ-like love?
Were their pronouns respected, I wonder?
I don't know. But you could ask them whether they felt respected. And I think the Salt Lake Tribune article makes it very clear that they were very disturbed by being cut off from services.
Correct.
Yeah. All right. Well, if that weren't enough, there's more. Moreover, the General Handbook acknowledges and provides latitude, we mentioned this previously, for other forms of medical care to be provided to transgender individuals. Section 38.6.23 of the General Handbook states, quote, some children, youth, and adults are prescribed hormone therapy by a licensed medical professional to ease gender dysphoria or reduce suicidal thoughts, close quote. It is incongruous that voice and communication services would be singled out for elimination, especially with the positive impact of gender-affirming practices. So they're basically saying, why is hormone therapy okay, but we're going to single out voice services as not okay?
Yeah.
That seems incongruous and problematic. They go on to write, the Master's MS education program in speech language pathology at Brigham Young University is accredited by the Council on Academic Accreditation in Audiology and Speech Language Pathology, or the CAA. The CAA's accreditation standards require academic programs provide content and opportunities for students to learn to practice in a manner consistent with recognized standards of ethical practice and relevant federal and state regulations, and that students are prepared to understand the healthcare and education landscapes and how to facilitate access to services. Students graduating from CAA accredited programs must understand the impact of their cultural and linguistic variables on the delivery of effective care, along with the impact of those variables for their clients. CAA accredited programs must ensure students show evidence of care, compassion, and appropriate empathy during interactions with everyone served. ASHA strongly urges BYU to adhere to ASHA's Code of Ethics, as well as the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints' policies and guidelines cited above, reverse its decision, and restore voice and communication services for transgender clients. So they're kind of throwing it down.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's ASHA throwing it down. And just some final thoughts. There's been some feedback from the academic community. One professor from Kentucky called this an ethical injustice. Another called it transphobic policy. There's a former BYU student who graduated from this department who said, this is RJ Risueño, and he writes, by denying services to transgender individuals, BYU is preventing their student clinicians to embrace a core component of the gospel of Jesus Christ, loving their neighbor. He said, in return, a community in need is left without access to essential services. We've talked about BYU's exemptions, right, Gerardo, from federal guidelines, and BYU and the Mormon Church fight super hard to ensure that BYU is exempted from federal laws prohibiting gender-based discrimination, and that they are guaranteed the right to deny healthcare if it wants, based on a person's identity.
But it really gets tricky because this is a clinical matter. So while BYU is going to want to pose that they have the right to do it, I still think there's a big argument, way stronger than, honor code violations, gay, same-sex dating and stuff, because it's a clinical matter. So, and again, it sounds like this hasn't been challenged in the courts. So it's a little bit of a gray area. And the odds are wouldn't look very good for the church.
Yeah. And I think it's worth wondering, whether this is the exact sort of thing that Jeffrey R. Holland envisioned when he gave his famous musket speech at BYU. And Gerardo, we had you prepare the clip from that musket speech, and let's hear what he had to say back then. I guess he's serving as a prophet right now. He's prophesying in this musket speech that certain departments or programs might be threatened with accreditation. Right? Is that right?
Yeah, correct. He's in the board of trustees of
BYU. So either he's being a prophet, or the lawyers at Kurt McConkie advised him that this was going to be happening soon.
Right.
Yeah. But here's what he said at the time.
If at a future time that mission means foregoing some professional affiliations and certifications, then so be it. There may come a day when the price we are asked to pay for such association is simply too high, too inconsistent with who we are. No one wants it to come to that, least of all me. But if it does, we will pursue our own destiny.
Pursue our own destiny of denying speech and language pathology services to vulnerable transgender individuals at BYU who need those services to become healthy and well.
Yeah.
It's a price he's just not willing to pay.
So sad.
Yeah. So some questions remain. I think, I'm curious, was this approved by the First Presidency, the Quorum of the 12, or the BYU board? Do they even know about it? I think that's worth, I'm curious to see whether it gets rescinded or not. What's the effect going to be on BYU? How many of these faculty members might leave? Will the department lose its accreditation? Will they have to just shut down this actual entire? My sister-in-law got a master's from BYU in speech and language pathology. Wouldn't it be a bummer if BYU had to just kill this entire department? But that's possible. They do that. They kill departments.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
They do.
And then it's just, is this really, you think we've talked about this recently on MormonStories, like can we name 10 things that we would love Jesus's one true church to be focusing on in the world, right? Like clean water, famine, disease, poverty, sex trafficking,
literacy,
malaria nets, all the things that you could focus on. This is what apostles are really caring about these days.
What a
of
hill to die
Jesus
on.
Christ.
And then the
it-
polling says that Gen Z has the highest percentages of, LGBTQ people right now. And like the rates are probably going to be between 5 and 10% of like adult populations is what I've read in polls. Right. So like, this is the hill that you're going to die on. Like
Yeah.
of all of the hills, not only is there better things to be spending your
Well, I
time
think
on.
Gen Z is like almost 20%, isn't it?
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
it's just,
Well, and
this is not
currently
the
at
way to go.
BYU, it's 18%.
Yeah. And I'm seeing more and more kids come out as transgender or as gender non-binary.
Mhm.
I mean, gender non-binary is a subset of transgender, but this is, I don't know if it's going to become as prevalent as being gay or lesbian or
Yeah.
bisexual, but it's becoming very common.
Yeah.
And-
But I think to Kara's point, like the more population there is that identifies as LGBT, the more acceptance of, the whole the whole LGBT population is,
Yeah. Yeah. It's just the church basically committing slow suicide.
Yeah.
I mean, I think.
Yeah.
At
Yeah.
least in the United States.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's lots of different parts of, the church where people are breaking the law of chastity or breaking the rules of the church, like all the football players who don't get thrown out of school for having sex.
Mm,
Are we going to shut down the football department, BYU? there's a whole hotbed of people doing things that are against the church rules there. But the one area where people need something and it's literally like life-ending care on the line, that's where they draw the line. Anyway, I just think it's always just this
I've
weird
never
hypocritical mix. of
I've never
just
told
what they
this
care about.
story. I've never told this story before, but while I was at BYU Idaho, I had I studied graphic design, and this girl who was graduating that semester, she stole my her whole senior project that she had to present for this class that you need to graduate. She stole her whole project, was literally my something I had done in the past. Like she grabbed my images from my website, logo that I have done, and she presented it as her own. And it got to the honor code office and they didn't do anything about it.
Really?
Yeah. I was called into the honor code office to to tell them because I was making a huge deal. I was so mad that the department chair was not doing anything. I was sending emails and I was super, but isn't it interesting? Because that's what kind of honor codes do in normal universities, right? Those are the kind of things that they regulate in non-religious universities, but it seems like they would rather regulate whether Charlie Bird can date or not.
Or like if you have a 5 o'clock shadow and you need to go take a test or anything. Just
How about this? Like, I'm just trying to think this through. Like BYU has a counseling and psychological services where they treat students with depression or anxiety or OCD or scrupulosity, right? Well, they're treating students who masturbate and look at porn.
Mm.
Should BYU shut down CAPS, counseling and psychological services, or should they deny treatment of
That's a good point.
of students who are masturbating and looking at porn because that's
they're
not
not living
approved by the church?
consistently with the principles of the gospel. And
I mean, I guess they would, but yeah, because I know for a fact that those therapists would not be telling BYU students
To stop.
to stop masturbating.
Yeah.
They would be saying, you know what, it's actually normal and healthy. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so if some of those students had scrupulosity,
Yeah.
they would be treating them to become accepting of their masturbation and pornography use.
Or homosexuality.
Yeah. Right? If there's an LGBT student, they're not going to be advising those students to get conversion therapy.
Right.
So like, are they going to shut down counseling and psychological service? I don't know. Maybe that's not a good analogy, but
it just calls into question when you mix religion with accreditation and what is
and professional services.
Yeah.
and like the actual
Well,
best care standards
what
and
about
practices.
nursing, and treating transgender people or
Yeah, if anyone knows, what's the nursing department up to?
like what about like a homosexual in like a gay student at BYU who goes to the student health center to get an STD test?
Yeah. That's a good one. Yeah. It's fun to think about let's invite our viewers and listeners. If you can think about analogous services being offered at BYU that technically violate the church's doctrine of theology or policies, write in, make comments here on YouTube or on Facebook, email us, and maybe for the next Mormon Scoops, we can include a list of all the inconsistent applications of this sort of policy. Does that make sense? I don't know. The point is, this is just super disturbing that the Church of Jesus Christ is doing this to very vulnerable populations, denying them services that they need so desperately. That's what it really comes down to. Yeah. All right. Well, that's all we have. That's just the kiddie cones. No, wait, no, that's the second topic.
Yeah.
Carah, did you want to?
Quick break for Carah's brand new segment that she's inventing right now, because we're running with this ice cream shop theme right now, as you can tell. And so I'm going to do a segment where if we get a comment from somebody, I'm going to do a little tea troll. Let's say somebody has come into the shop, and I'm going to call them, instead of like Karen, we'll call it a Kyle's coupons. And Kyle brought in a coupon, and they say that it's valid, and this is a point that we should be taking issue with. And they called the manager and me, and I'm going to give you a real soft-talking to Kyle with your coupons, okay? So I just wanted to highlight this comment by Scott. Scott, what are you doing here?
Well, read the
Scott,
comment. Okay. Sorry.
I am the manager. I outrank you. One of my subordinates over there. He's only a supervisor. Okay, Scott, I want to talk with you. Scott said, if the Black students wanted dialogue, they could have gone to his office hours. It was not the time or place to disrupt his class. So I just want to give you a little tip for coming into our ice cream shop here. The best way when approaching something where there's different marginalized people, kind of in the mix, especially, it would probably be a better option for you to get the service that you wanted. Instead of throwing a fit about what they should have done, maybe ask a question. Get curious and ask the question, like, did they come in during his office hours? Did they come in during his class? And if so, that would have been maybe a more appropriate time. So maybe just like take a back seat and listen and do a little Googling, maybe listen back to the clip that we played again, because if you did, you would have heard that they indeed came at the end of Brad Wilcox's class instead of in it. So it's a very dangerous section that you're treading on there, Scott. And I just want to counsel you that if you want to come into our shop and you want to be welcome here, be really careful and just get curious instead of saying things like what a marginalized community should be doing. Now go to Chipotle and go get a sample over there. back to the program. Thank you very much.
What's that segment called, Carah?
This is called Kyle's coupons or Karen's coupons.
What the fudge? Karen's coupons.
This is talking to the manager.
All right.
Okay.
Back over to you guys.
Thanks, Carah. All right. One really quick shout out to our Discord server. Our buddy Justin, along with some really cool supporters and admins, have created a MormonStories Discord channel. I think there's over 600 people who are members, and they're doing really good work over there. They're probably watching and talking about this episode right now on the Discord channel.
I think I'm going to be in it next Monday.
Oh, you are? And Carah, you were there last.
Yeah, the Discord is so cool, you guys. I just did like an AMA on the Discord, and you can like do it through audio, and so I'm able to talk to everybody, and I didn't have to get out of bed. Yeah, and people get to talk back, and we get to they get to raise their hand, and like we had probably 30 people and had a bunch of different questions, and it's like a really lighthearted, fun conversation. I got asked in the AMA if I wasn't doing this, what I would do, and my answer didn't even have to think about it. It'd be making Simpsons content, and then we got to talk about the Simpsons and how it relates to Mormonism. So that audio is still available on the Discord if anyone wants to go back and listen to it. Super fun. Huge shout out to Justin and all the other admins and all the other mods and stuff that are helping with that. It's a really fun little community. I'm super impressed with how much they've built already.
And for kind of older folk, like anyone over 20 who's never used Discord before, think of it as a way for you to have real-time communication. So like if you think about Facebook, you post something and then you wait for someone to answer, and then you come back later and you read it.
Yeah.
Discord allows you to chat with people real time, people that are on the server real time, both in text and, if you want, in video. It would also allow you to kind of play games with other people. And there's also an Exmo Gamers Discord channel that I highly recommend. We'll include that in the show notes. But if you go to any of the descriptions, maybe Carah can include a link to the Discord channel in the comments right now. She can get that from Slack or from any other past description. But we'll start including a link to the Discord channel in all our descriptions of each episode. And we just encourage you guys to check it out. If you're looking for friends, if you're looking for a community, these Discord members, they don't even talk about Mormon Stories episodes very much. It's just like a bunch of people who share a similar background, making friends and forging community. And it's something the younger people are doing. Anyway, check out the Mormon Stories podcast Discord channel. Shout out to Justin and all his admins for making that possible. All right. It is time for the third topic. And I'm starting to think about these Scoops episodes. We probably tried to cover too much content in one episode, didn't we? Because we're like an hour. I'm just speaking honestly. We're like an hour and 20 minutes in, and we haven't even hit the main topic.
We gotta go fast.
Either that or just prepare less content.
Yep.
For next episodes. What do you think, Carah?
Never.
No?
I the last ones I did time codes on, so people can jump to whatever they want. And if you guys want us to be shorter and more succinct, and we can try that too. Yeah, comments and feedback is welcome, but we're just having a good time.
And we're experimenting with stuff.
Yeah.
So we've still got this one last topic, and then we're going to still take in call-in questions and comments. I mean, this will be a 3-hour episode, but that's okay. We'll learn as we go.
I'm paid by the hour.
Yeah, Carah.
Don't ask me.
Or Gerardo. Okay. All right. Well, the third topic that we're going to be covering today, and I think this is kind of a big deal because we love it when we get secret insider video that we can leak or share.
But it's leaked because it's deleted now.
Yeah. So someone from the Utah Kaysville stake or area shared with me the internal private video of a devotional for sisters featuring Mormon apostle Dale G. Renlund. Is that his name,
Right.
Carah? Dale G. Renlund?
Like I talk to him on the phone every day. I'm like, how do you pronounce your name? No,
Hey, Dale.
I'm doing my best guess.
So we're breaking news here of an internal conversation devotional that a Mormon apostle had with a bunch of Kaysville sisters. And Gerardo,
And some sisters too. Like I think General Relief Society president, right, Carah?
It'll say it in the slides
Yeah,
once we
yeah,
get into
but-
it.
okay.
They're labeled.
There's
So who wants to set this up, Gerardo or Carah? Who wants to talk about kind of what we're going to be seeing here? Should we just jump to the first?
I think we can
segment?
just
jump to the first
right
one.
in.
Okay, so who wants to set up this first segment? What is this first segment? It says Elder Dale G. Renlund, what stops the spirit?
Oh yeah, I wrote that.
So-
What stops the spirit?
so
Not
what-
ableist language, apparently.
So what should we be looking for here, Carah? Why did we single out this clip?
Why did we single out this clip? Because it's just a really interesting look at how the church talks about how the spirit is so helpful at everything in our daily lives, except for all of the ways that it can be thwarted, which are a lot. And it's like, geez, this all-powerful God sure had some like oopsies in the planning here of how to not be able to communicate with us.
So what he's about to say is people with anxiety and depression sometimes can't feel the spirit. Is that what he's about to say?
I think so.
amongst other things.
All right.
But
And we don't want to dissect it. I just want to
Right.
introduce it to let people know what to
the
look for.
context is that this seems to be a really prevalent topic in the church. Every time apostles talk about feeling the spirit and recognizing if it's the spirit or if it's myself who are thinking about something, it seems like apostles are always saying that that's the question they always get. And we have admissions, I think, at least by 2 apostles saying that even they struggle with recognizing what is the spirit and what's their own thoughts. And I mean, the church promises that people are going to be feeling the spirit the whole 100% of the time. Once
That's
they
the
receive,
value of the
Right.
gift of the Holy Ghost, is
Right.
that you get it all the time.
Yeah. So now they have to face the issue. Oh, why do I would say most people say they don't feel it?
Why are so many Mormons saying they don't feel the spirit?
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
So this is Elder Dale G. Renlund talking about when some Mormons don't feel the spirit. Should we roll the clip?
Yes, sir.
All right, here we go.
The influence of the Holy Ghost can be obscured by strong emotions, such as anger, hate, or fear. That's what happens to me. If I have those emotions, it's very hard for me to feel the Spirit. It's sort of like trying to savor the taste of a grape while also sucking on a jalapeno pepper. The one flavor overwhelms the other, and you can't sense it. So behaviors that distance us from the Holy Ghost, for me, including sin, make it difficult to perceive God's love for us. Similarly, our sense of God's love can be blunted by challenging circumstances and physical or mental illness, among other things.
Okay, so who wants to go first in saying what they didn't like about what we just heard?
Did we miss a part of it
I don't know, which part were you thinking of?
where he says mental illness? Did he mention
He
that?
just said mental illness
Oh,
at the end.
Okay.
Circumstances,
Physical and mental.
physical and
illness.
mental,
Yeah, correct.
and yeah, mental illness. And that's a pretty ubiquitous thing that most of us have to deal with at some point in our lives.
So what
Seems-
was disturbing about that?
yeah. Gerardo, you can go first.
Well, I think he's trying to solve a problem, right? And he decides to do it by blaming the people's situation on them and saying that's why you can't feel the Spirit, because you have either mental or physical illness. That seems a little bit discriminatory. I hope God is not discriminatory of persons, like no matter if they're facing physical or mental illness. So the fact that God can't, make his power strong enough so people with those challenges feel it, I mean, makes you wonder, is God really powerful?
It's kind of a weak sauce Holy Ghost that can't break through depression or anxiety. I mean, God's the creator of the universe. Jesus and God are the creators of the universe. The Holy Ghost is part of the Godhead. It's kind of a weak sauce member of the Godhead that can't break through anxiety and depression to reach God's members that have been promised to get to the Holy Ghost, when they were confirmed, after their baptism. That's one of the value propositions of being a member of the church is you, like you said, Carah, you get the Holy Ghost constantly. Brad Wilcox said that's, one of the bonuses of being a Mormon, unlike those pitiful non-Mormons who only get the Spirit occasionally. We get it all the time, unless you have anxiety and depression, and then you're kind of SOL, as they say.
Yeah. It's like an asterisk on the end of a drug commercial at the TV where it's like people who experience anxiety, depression, circumstances,
diarrhea, headaches.
should not be able to take the Spirit. The Spirit is not actually going to be helpful in your life. Yeah. It's like terms and conditions apply and completely makes the entire the value proposition irrelevant at the end of the day.
Enjoy the Holy Ghost unless you experience diarrhea, depression, anxiety, or anger or sin.
John, I've been listening. I'm almost done with Stephen Hassan's book on
cults.
Yeah.
Combating cult mind control.
Right. And he talks about,
we can include that in the show notes.
Yeah. He talks a lot about this like high demand, unhealthy organizations teaching its members to not feel like that anger is wrong, that feeling strong emotions is wrong, and that they should turn them off. Do you want to talk a little bit about why that could be problematic? Why the church teaching its members that anger is bad, that strong emotions are wrong? Why is that problematic?
Well, it's kind of this idea of keep sweet, right? Warren Jeffs would always tell the women who weren't super happy about polygamy. I think he wrote keep sweet on his shoes. And when they came in to complain about him, he would put his shoes up on the desk and they would read keep sweet on his shoes. And it was just this reminder to know your place. Telling Mormons, telling any member of a high demand religion or cult that anger is bad it's a form of thought stopping. It's a way to say, okay, you may feel disturbed. You may feel like you've been harmed. You may feel like something's wrong, but turn it off, turn off your conscience, shut down your emotions, swallow it, suppress it, keep sweet. And that's when the church teaches that anger is of the devil, that anger is a bad emotion, it's a way to kind of unplug our short circuit, our moral conscience, our own internal voice of moral authority, and get us to just pay, pray, and obey.
Yeah.
And it's just a dangerous technique.
Yeah. And he talks about strong emotions or like things that make us feel uncomfortable. And I think Stephen Hassan mentions that this later translates. So when members of high demand religions get information that would create cognitive dissonance with what they believe, they suppress it, and then they're able to, and then thought stopping becomes almost like an addiction, where
Yeah.
like they're so used to do it with their strong emotions that it's very easy to turn off when they are confronted with information that could challenge their beliefs.
Yeah, or disturbing information like, oh my gosh, a child is being sexually
Yeah.
molested.
Mhm.
Maybe we need to call the police. And
Yeah.
then the
Yeah.
Kurt McConkie says, don't call the police. And you're like, okay,
Yep.
I'll stop my conscience. I'll stop
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
moral outrage. Anyway, yeah, so that's an interesting thing.
Everyone
from
needs to read that book.
Combating Cult Mind Control.
Yeah.
Carrie, you want to show it to the audience because you just grabbed a copy? There it is, Combating Cult Mind Control. I think Jen is doing show notes, so she can add those to the show notes.
What's crazy is that he wrote that book without any knowledge of Mormonism, really, right? The first edition. It was until this last edition when he included a couple mentions of the LDS Church. But
well, not everyone thinks the Mormon Church is a cult, Gerardo.
And that's fine.
Just offensive people.
That's fine. I definitely think that not everybody experiences it as you know, as a cult.
Okay, well, let's go to the next comment made by Elder Renlund. Who wants to set this up? The title of the slide says, Sister Sharon Eubank, first counselor in the Relief Society General Presidency, comparing President Nelson to the Hubble telescope. Should we just play it?
Yep.
All right, here's the clip.
You can also rely on a more powerful lens like the Hubble that's rotating around the sun. The prophets will not give us poor vision. They can see things because of where they're placed that we will never see ourselves. And we can trust that data as it comes back to us, that it's a faithful representation. God will not allow his prophets to teach us false doctrine. So their testimonies are trustworthy.
Oh my gosh, I already have so many problems with what she just said. Like, what about the Adam God theory? Did Brigham Young not teach the Adam God theory? That's false doctrine.
And Bruce R. McConkie is on record admitting that Brigham Young taught that.
Yeah. Or all the, like, didn't the Gospel Topics essay on race in the priesthood admit that prophets, seers, and revelators taught false doctrine about blacks being unworthy to receive the priesthood?
Those were theories advanced in the past.
No, but I'm saying, like, they absolutely do teach false doctrine.
Yeah, for sure.
So, I mean, that's ridiculous. But also this idea, I don't mean to just hammer on her, but like this idea that they see things ahead of time. Did they see, the need for women to vote ahead of time? Did they see the civil rights movement ahead of time? Did they see the Equal Rights Amendment ahead of time? Did they see this LGBTQ crisis ahead of time? Like, they've been behind 10 to 20 to 30 years of any major social justice movement. Like, what is it that they're seeing ahead of time? Can you tell me, Carah? What are
home church? I told you guys I was going to argue with John. I'm gonna be for. I'm gonna be for the prophetic revelation. Home church, and that's it. That's all I got. And then the COVID came, and then they were like, "Perfect."
Oh, that's true.
That's good.
Yeah,
that's good. Oh, nice one,
Thus
Carah.
ends my argument.
Nice
I have no other examples.
Nice one, Carah. No, I mean that's a really, it's, if anything in 2022, we're wishing that the prophets, seers, and revelators would prophesy, see, and reveal. Anyway,
well, if you think about what Joseph Smith was doing, during his time, like he would see a pile of rocks and say, "Oh, that's the altar where Adam offered sacrifice," and some skeletons, and say, "Oh, like he was receiving revelation all the time." People would come to him, like Emma would come to him and say, "Oh, do you want to ask God about this tobacco chewing thing?" And he would receive, the revelation on the word of wisdom. It seems like prophets today are very reluctant to be asked questions that they can't answer.
Yeah. And going back to the cult mind control thing, one of the, the letters of the BITE model is information control. And people like us who hear that, who understand the information, our brains go to a place like John just listed off a bunch of things where we go, oh, they weren't prophesying very well at X, Y, Z. It's because at a certain point when I'm 30 years old, I'm finally confronted with this information that I didn't have before. So if you asked me when I was like 28 years old in the church, I would have gone like, yeah, they're so good. And I could only think and cherry pick all of the reasons why the prophets have always been like, yeah, word of wisdom, 100%, tobacco bad. I could have like listed off all of those things, but I have been exposed to too much information to know that there's about this many things that they've had like a good prophetic like ability. But I have a whole truckload of books and sayings and understandings of the opposite. And once you're confronted with that information, it's really, really hard to put your faith in that Hubble telescope of the prophet anymore. Some people do it, and maybe they say they're still better than nothing. And I was there for a while, but just they can only say those kinds of things, like she just said, when they have information control.
Yeah. Well, we've included some additional clips to provide some further analysis.
Yeah.
Does someone want to set up this Keith Erickson clip?
Yeah. So
and why we're sharing it?
So Keith Erickson is the sorry, can you put up this? Yeah. So he's the director historical research and outreach of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. That's what it says on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So he's employed by the church. He has a book contract with Desert Book. So what he says is, I think, has quite a bit of weight. And so he gave recently a speech at the Ensign College during their weekly devotionals. And it was really interesting. It was titled something like "The Misconceptions About Following the Prophet."
Expectations of a prophet.
Right. Expectations of and basically it was the misconceptions that LDS members have regarding prophets. So
let's hear what he had to say about prophets.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. This is Keith Erickson.
Latter-day Saint doctrine does not include a provision that a prophet is infallible. We should also not expect that prophets do not get tricked.
Okay, so what's the contradiction there?
Well, if they can't teach false doctrine, but then they can get tricked, how does that work, right?
So is it a Hubble telescope or can they get tricked? Which is it?
Well, let's watch the next one.
Okay, so what's this next clip?
Even better.
What's this next clip about?
Can you put it up so I can?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is Wendy Nelson telling us about what should we do with when the prophet talks.
Okay. Speaking to the saints in Europe.
It is true.
Today it can be difficult to know who speaks the truth. But my testimony is that prophets of God always speak the truth. For this new year, let's put an exclamation mark after every statement from a prophet and a question mark after everything else we read, see,
or what?
I can't remember.
Come across on Mormon Scoops live Thursdays at 7.
We got to test each clip we make.
Yeah,
sure it ends
sorry,
at the
that
right
was my
point.
fault.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Yeah. So which is it? Is it they're a Hubble telescope that they can see things clearly and predict the future, or it's a misconception that they can't make mistakes?
Yeah.
Or
they can't get tricked.
Yeah.
Or infallible. What's the meaning of the word infallible?
Yeah.
Inability to fail. I don't know.
Right. So inability maybe of teaching false doctrine, of teaching false things, right?
Ooh, it's even worse. It's incapable of making mistakes or being wrong.
Right. So, I mean, Keith Erickson says like prophets are not infallible, but then Wendy Nelson is saying that they're incapable of teaching something that it's untruth.
And this is Luna Lindsay Corbden talks about this idea of doublespeak.
Yeah.
High demand religions, or in some cases cults, they always want to have everything both ways. So on the one hand, they want to have everyone follow the prophet and believe that they're perfect. And at the same time, they want to make sure that when they have mistakes, that everyone is programmed to cut them slack, to give Brother Joseph a break.
Yeah.
And why are you laughing so hard?
I'm dying.
Why are you laughing so hard?
Okay. I have to find the comment. I just lost it.
Okay.
No, wait. Mick Durrington has my favorite comment of the year. Hubble telescope sees light from the past. So
ooh, you like that?
Yeah,
for
the Hubble
correction.
telescope, it is seeing light from the past. So
Oh.
if you want to make that comparison, sure, apt, hella apt.
From like gazillion
The
years
light
ago.
that they're getting is from a billion years ago. I couldn't think of a better comparison. Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
Thank you for that, Carah. Thank you. Okay, Gerardo, you were saying.
I can't remember what I was saying.
No, it's fine.
Oh, yes, the double speak.
Yeah.
It makes it so that members, when they're confronted with different information from either side, they are able to justify it to themselves, because in their mind they put both things together, and they are not able to see the cognitive dissonance between both arguments are
Contradictory.
Yeah. So it keeps them in.
Yeah. All right. Well, we got more from Keith Erickson here. What's he going to be telling us here, Gerardo?
Prophets don't teach us to follow them.
Okay, so that's interesting. I can already see where this is going. So Keith Erickson is telling us how prophets don't teach us to follow them. Okay.
Prophets do not urge us to follow or imitate them, but to follow and imitate the Savior. George Q. Cannon served as a counselor in the First Presidency to Brigham Young, John Taylor, Wilford Woodruff, and Lorenzo Snow. Do not, he counseled, put your trust in man, though he be a bishop, an apostle, or a president. If you do, they will fail you at some time or place. They will do wrong or seem to, and your support will be gone. But if we lean on God, he will never fail us. We must not elevate the childhood game of follow the leader into a false template for human imitation. Stated another way, the prophets do not teach us to follow them, but to hear him.
What the?
I can make up word salad lies too. Globbly glib, blah 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 blah. What are you saying? Have you ever been to this church?
No, I think it would be really impactful if you play the next clip without
Here we go.
context.
commenting yet.
No
Here we
comment.
go. Here we go.
Yeah.
So are you telling us that it's important to follow the prophet?
Yes.
Why?
It's important to follow the prophet because if we didn't follow the prophet, we could start to stray away from the church and not do as many things to read the scriptures every night. If we stopped reading the scriptures, we would stop really thinking about the church and any other time about the church, and it would just become kind of annoying to go to the church, and you might eventually even stop.
That wouldn't be good, would it? Any other thoughts? Why do you follow the prophet? Why is that important? Yes, Nathan.
So it's important because you can follow him, and if you follow him, you can live in the celestial kingdom, and you'll be happy with your families, and you'll be super happy, and you can live forever.
President Nelson, would you ever lead anyone astray?
Oh, no.
That's not what prophets do, is it?
Some of them have said, if the president of the church should ever lead people astray, God would take him away. So I like to stay here, and I won't lead you astray. Do you know what the word prophet means? He speaks for God. And so God won't lead you astray, and the prophet will not lead you astray.
I have no words.
Yeah.
I was laughing at first, and then I'm just like,
It's really creepy, a little bit.
and then the fact that, I mean, we all know, we don't have a clip of it, but we all have heard the song, the primary song,
Yeah.
follow the prophet, follow the
I
prophet.
thought this was more impactful because it's Nelson
is.
there.
It is.
Yeah.
But
We
he's
live
saying
in
it
a
himself,
time
right?
when
Right.
People are confused. If you don't believe it,
Go and watch the news. We can need direction all along the way. If you heed the prophets, follow what they say. Follow the prophet. I mean, that's where every primary kid sings that song at least once or twice a month, right?
But that's the kids, that's not the prophets.
Yeah. Yeah, but there's President Nelson actually saying it.
Yeah.
And
well, agreeing with them. Yeah.
but then Keith Erickson is saying that the church doesn't teach that and the prophets don't teach that. It's not true.
Yeah.
I want to give kudos where kudos are due. If that is this nuanced new approach that the church wants to go with, thumbs up from me, not taking the things the prophet says too seriously and understanding that they're fallible beings. And if what Keith is saying is like the new rebrand of what prophets are, got a thumbs up from me on that
Well,
one.
the thing is that I think this devotional is being given at the same time, So who do we listen to? Keith Erickson or Elder Renlund and the Relief Society president?
Or the prophet himself.
Right. Or
Who says,
right.
I would literally
never leave you astray.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just want to drill this home because what Elder Renlund was saying, sorry, not Elder Renlund. Who was just giving that clip? I forgot already.
The sister
Sharon Eubanks.
Joy Jones. Are you talking
No.
about Joy?
That was the with the primary.
Okay.
The point is this idea of
Sharon Eubank.
Yeah, in real terms of actually I wanted to speak to what Keith was saying. The way that Keith was talking about at some point these leaders are going to fail you, and he had that quote from George Buchanan, right?
Mm-hmm.
That would be lovely if it was actually applied, because we just had an episode on Mormon Stories that just aired today about very fallible leaders putting a child molester in as bishop. And so if we could actually apply that in real terms, what happened to the couple? What happened to the Reddishes today, Colby and Cammie, that were on the podcast? What happened when they said this leader who put this person in this position is fallible? This person said that this case is closed and we're not looking into it. We're not going to alert anyone in the stake about this bishop being a child molester. This has real actual consequences in the lives of people. So when they're saying, hey, this leader is just because they're a leader doesn't mean that they made the correct position or the correct assessment of the situation. And all of the Reddishes board members are heaping hate upon them for not following the counsel of what the stake president said, that it was done, it was a case closed, and then they're completely like ostracized for their community. So that's one example of some. I think we could all think of one.
Yeah.
Of like, why can't we actually apply this George Buchanan idea that when they are fallible, what do people do about it? Are they welcomed? Are they saying like, you're right, maybe there's a little bit too much strict authoritarianism here, or are they ostracized from their community and ousted for not following the direction of their leaders?
Yeah,
because that is it's a really simple fix. Let them be questioned a little bit more. Anyway, because now this couple was thrown into an entire faith crisis over it. Like, it's a real simple fix. I honestly.
But what
think
happens
they can't
is
give up their
that the
authority.
whole system in which the church is built up on, that what makes people really give 10% of their income and stay really loyal, like give vast amount of their time, starts fading away. Because if the prophet can be wrong, then that means that maybe I don't have to listen to everything he says, right?
Yeah, like if I'm allowed to have some independent thought. Oh no, don't want that. Also, shout out to Colby. What's up, dude? Said Carah's drumming up interest for tomorrow, which I am.
Colby's in the house.
Colby's in the house.
Colby Reddish.
Thanks again for sharing your story today, guys.
Yeah, we love you, Colby. We think you and your wife are super courageous. So thanks for joining us. Okay, well, we're not done. We have more. Well, yeah, I like what you said, Carah. Like, if the church is starting to back off this idea of prophetic infallibility, that prophets, that is one of the biggest problems. I think even like Jim Bennett calls that idolatry, right? Like,
I love it.
Mormon prophet worship is idolatry. Everyone comes by it honestly, but it's a problem. So kudos to the church for working to walk that back.
Yeah,
And
I love that he
continue.
says that it's a false doctrine. Jim Bennett says that like prophet infallibility is a false doctrine.
Yeah.
The problem is that we have the prophet himself promoting that idea.
Yeah. What's that old saying from like Martin Luther King Jr. or sometime, where you always like to say, John, that power often does not relinquish itself voluntarily.
Yeah. It must be forced. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll see if that dude Keith Erickson has his way, right? He's kind of I wonder if he's a little bit off, kind of like off. I wonder if he's a little bit off.
It was interesting that the church news had posted the same video on their website.
Yeah.
I mean, they made an article about it, but then when you go and click on the video, it was taking off the website. I mean, I was able to find it on the Ensign College YouTube channel, but
Yeah, it's hard to find. Well, I hope when the brethren start saying that at General Conference, like,
yeah.
take everything we say with a grain of salt, because we may totally have it wrong here at General Conference.
Yeah,
You know what
I
mean?
have I have a TikTok that, because Keith Erickson has given that speech a couple times before on like that Latter-day Saint podcast that LDS Living does, called, that I can't remember, but he's done it before, and I'm really glad because I listened to it in my bathroom, and I was like, in your bathroom where there's like usually no lights, I actually turned it out, and the gaslighting that came from my phone playing that podcast lit up the whole room really bright.
I want there to be a flashing asterisk at the bottom of General Conference that says
Yeah.
mileage may vary.
Yeah.
These things being said are not necessarily prophecy.
Just a big neon sign
Leadership.
that says like speaking as a man,
Speaking
speaking as
as
a
a-
prophet, and just they can turn it on and off because it's
Yeah.
really important to know the difference.
All right. So the next statement from Elder Renlund is about having same-sex attraction.
Mm.
So Gerardo, we're going to expect you to, no, actually that's rude. We shouldn't expect minorities to represent all minorities, but I am interested, Gerardo, in knowing what you think about what Elder Renlund says about having same-sex attraction. So
Yeah.
let's roll the clip.
That having same-sex attraction is not a sin. Bullying, belittling, ridiculing someone because they have same-sex attraction is a sin. And the Lord's very displeased with that. As a church, we are not the ones that take and say, even for those who are behaving contrary to God's law of chastity, we're not the ones condemning them to hell. In fact, we believe that the honorable people of the earth will receive a degree of glory in the hereafter that equals or exceeds that which other Christian denominations consider heaven.
Wow.
So we reach out with love and understanding among the youth. The things that are really hard on a youth who is same-sex attracted is loneliness, isolation, and helplessness. As a church, we can help with those things.
He was going good. He was doing good. He was
What'd you
doing
like?
good, and then
What'd you like?
um,
And then what did you not like?
most of it was really good. I mean, calling people who bully or belittle people with same-sex attraction, calling them the sinners, that's a big deal. That's good. Um,
In your experience, there's more like big T bullying and then like the soft, more shunning version. And so would you consider it though belittling and bullying if somebody doesn't view your marriage to your husband as equal to like a heterosexual marriage if you were to attend church? Just if they did not recognize your marriage as a true marriage.
yeah, I think
'Cause if that's the church's
Yeah.
standard.
Yeah, I think someone calling it what do they call it in the church?
Fake marriage or sham
yeah,
or,
yeah, there's a word. But anyway,
You
yeah,
li- you
it's
like-
hurtful.
Yeah, but you like that he's calling out bullying of LGBT people.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I wish this should be a quote that should be out there, jointly with those. I can count at least 5 other quotes that are pretty big out there from like apostles calling out homophobic statements or anyway.
Has that ever been said at General Conference that
No.
you're aware of?
No.
So you'd like to see that
Yeah,
said at General
for
Conference?
sure. Most of this type of quotes are never said in General Conference.
They're said behind the scenes
Yeah.
to a
Right,
select audience.
Right. They're what comes out of a General Conference is usually more a little homophobic statements.
Yeah.
From Elder Oaks, Elder Holland.
Yeah.
So yeah, I wish this was said at General Conference. I think it's a pretty good concept to teach the membership.
What
Yeah.
about him saying that same-sex attraction isn't a sin? Is that a bone? Was he throwing you a bone there?
That has been the church's teaching for decades.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
Yeah. What about how he said that we're not like other Christians where like we condemn
Oh,
people
that
to
one was
hell.
really
They actually get a higher level of
good.
glory.
That was really good, I thought.
You got thrown a bone that you'll what was he saying?
Well,
there?
he's saying as members of the church, we cannot say that gay people who are in a same-sex relationship are going to go to hell. In fact, our doctrine is more expansive, and they may even achieve a higher degree of heaven than we might think. So we're not the ones that are going to judge. So that one's really good too.
So LGBT Mormons aren't the lowest. They may not make the highest rate.
Well, he doesn't say which one, right?
Yeah.
But it seems like a softer way of like rhetoric around LGBTQ issues.
Yeah.
It's like it's not actually that bad. Like it's bad, but it's not that.
It's not
bad.
the worst thing. It's
not the worst thing in
bad,
the
but it's
world.
not the worst thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and what he's saying is like church members should not condemn LGBT people who decide to enter into same-sex relationships. Members should not condemn them to hell because we really don't know what's going to happen to them. Those kind of statements I've only heard from people like Jim Bennett and like really progressive apologists. So coming from an apostle, I think that's a big deal.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, however, he then says that the church will help people with same-sex attraction when they feel lonely, and what else does he?
Yeah, he said that some of the challenges that LGBTQ youth in the church face are loneliness and isolation, and that the church can help with that.
Yeah, that statement, we all know it's false.
I think I think they did some survey at some point of like LGBT youth because they're trying to dispel the myth that the Mormon church causes LGBTQ suicide.
Yeah.
So they quote some study that basically says LGBTQ youth who have no church and no support.
It was in Utah.
Maybe do worse than LGBTQ Mormons that at least have a church to attend.
Yeah.
Isn't that what he's trying to say? He's trying to make the argument that that the LDS church is healthy for LGBTQ youth.
Yeah.
That's a stretch.
It's a stretch even by the people who performed the study. They would say that's a huge stretch from the results they got because they really don't know. It was in Utah, and the study was done in Utah,
right?
Where a big part of the population is either very conservative politically or are LDS. We know, like the transgender bill that is trying to be passed right now about transgender students and in schools and stuff like that. So it goes beyond. So in Utah, it goes beyond the LDS church. Like transphobia, homophobia goes beyond the church, and that there's no way to know that the results that this study provided or gave are not affected by things like that, by people being highly conservative in Utah.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to think this through, and like, let's just say Utah is a super homophobic state,
right?
Then non-Mormon or non-churched LGBTQ youth in Utah are going to do worse than LDS LGBTQ youth because they live in a super homophobic state.
Yeah,
that is super homophobic, largely because of the predominant religion in the state. So the church doesn't get brownie points that LGBTQ youth do a little bit better by going to church, the Mormon church, than non-Mormon LGBTQ youth in Utah that are just suffering from LGBTQ homophobia in Utah because of the Mormon church's influence. I don't know. That's my way of.
Yeah, that's exactly how I'm thinking about it.
Yeah. All right. Well, there's more. There's another clip that Elder Renlund makes about LGBTQ people. Should we just play it?
Sure.
All right, here we go.
Whatever is unfair in this life will be made right because of the atonement of Jesus Christ. How that's done, I don't know. When that's done, I don't know. But I know that it will be made right through the atonement of Jesus Christ. And I think that as a church, we help each other. We help those that struggle in any way. We reach out with love and compassion, never with hate, never with judging. And we teach the doctrine.
and we teach the doctrine. So it almost feels, there's a couple things to say there, but it's like we reach out with love, great, thumbs up, and teach the doctrine. And like he comes back down to drop down the hammer, because the doctrine, no matter any way you want to nuance it, it's still not inclusive to people of different gender identities. And
Yeah, it's
sexual
homophobic.
orientations.
It's a homophobic doctrine. But I mean, that was like, I mean, okay, so the church has wrestled with this issue for a while. Really, there's only, I'm aware of one official and one semi-official statement regarding if homosexuality will be cured or disappeared in the next life. One of them was by Elder Wickman on his interview with Elder Oaks. It's on, I can find it in the church news website. It's a pretty famous interview as well, where Elder Oaks talked about not inviting your LGBT son or daughter to family gatherings because they might influence other kids. I mean, Elder Oaks, that makes that famous quote. But anyway, in that interview, Elder Wickman says that homosexuality or same-sex attraction is not going to exist in the next life. I think the church has gotten a lot of heat regarding that statement because some people think it causes LGBT, including David Archuleta, by the way, because he mentions it on his 1-hour video, where like it makes LGBT people want to commit suicide or die by suicide, because then it would, let's just go to the next life if this life is too hard to endure.
This will be taken away from me.
Yeah, exactly. So the church has never addressed that issue again, and I think Elder Renlund is that's what he's talking about, that he's not sure how it's going to be made right. The fact that LGBT people have this quote unquote challenge, but he believes it's going to made right. And so it's prophets again saying like, we don't know, we're prophets, we're supposed to be receiving revelation about these things, but I guess we don't know.
Yeah. So how are you feeling overall about Renlund's LGBTQ rhetoric? Does he
There's positives and negatives.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Really, were you gonna say something, Carah?
All I was going to say is it just reminds me of like when you're in primary and the church is really good at giving you, the roadmap of how to live a happy, successful life, do these things, follow the prophets, you're a child of God, all of the basic things that you learn in primary and those little testimonies, things that help you throughout your life. And then you grow up and maybe you discover that you are not straight or something that makes you not be able to live out that blueprint that God had for you. And it's really this awful struggle that so many people like Gerardo and other like LGBTQ Mormons have had to face, is you have your entire life put into this, like on this roadmap, on this covenant path. And then when you don't fit within it, like, where do you even go? What do you do? Because this was your identity as a child of God. And it almost is like spilling the beans, letting the cat out of the bag when you hear apostles say, remember how we gave you that identity since you were a kid, that you're a child of God? Again, terms and conditions apply. We don't actually have a whole lot of extra data about it, because it turns out the way that you're a child of God, the way that you like have a certain sexuality, it's confusing us. So just stick with the identity that we gave you as a child of God.
Yep.
Any extra and or questions will be answered in the next life. Don't ask us. We're busy people. It just is really, you give someone an identity, and then when they can't ask follow-up questions about a core identity that doesn't fit within that covenant path, that's crazy making behavior. So the fact that he just admitted that we don't know is wild. Like,
yeah, I agree.
Yeah. It just begs the question, really, what is the value of a prophet, seer, and revelator if on something that's literally leading to depression, anxiety, suicidal ideation, or death by suicide? It's destroying the church, literally dismantling the modern Mormon church. Like, it would have been nice that they could have actually saw that ahead of time and came out with some, and God could have included that in the Book of Mormon. Maybe he could have, the Book of Mormon was written for our time. Was it?
Yeah.
Was the Book of Mormon written for our time? Really?
Yeah.
Was the Doctrine and Covenants written for our time? They're silent on LGBTQ issues. And so, have most of the prophets, seers, and revelators. Anyway, I have just now pasted into the comments the link to join us over video. So, and we pinned it to the top of the YouTube channel, at least. Gerardo, I don't know if you want to pin it or paste it in descriptions or elsewhere real quick, but we've just got a couple more clips to play.
Wait, so you did it on the comments?
I did it in the comments.
Okay.
Yeah. If you want to paste it elsewhere, that's fine. But
I think the comments.
any of the viewers want to join us, we would love to invite and get some of our viewer and listener feedback. You can join us on StreamYard. Make sure and enable your camera and your microphone beforehand, and we would love to take some of your calls. We've got a few more quick clips to play. The next clip is entitled "Speculative Reasoning Can Lead to Deception." So I'll go ahead and play that next.
Mother in Heaven, and it'll take you to the Gospel Topic Essays, Mother in Heaven. And if you read what's there, you will know everything that I know about that subject. Speculation won't lead to greater spiritual knowledge. Demanding revelation from God is both arrogant and unproductive. Instead, we wait on the Lord and his timetable to reveal his truths through the means that he's established. And please remember that reason can lead to revelation, but can't replace it. Speculative reasoning can lead to deception or divert our focus from what has been revealed.
All right. What did you guys find interesting about that clip? Carah, do you want to go first?
Yeah, before we started, Gerardo and I were talking about how kind of the tradition of the way that a lot of revelation that has been given in the LDS Church, wouldn't you say, has been done by starting with some speculation or starting by people demanding, like, the prophet pray about it?
That's literally how a lot of the revelation from Joseph Smith's timing.
Joseph Smith's time, and it feels like all the way up into the civil rights era of people like demanding something, and then oops, and just so happens like people can have the priesthood that are from African descent now, you know? Like, I feel like people demand things all the time, and the church has to acquiesce. That seems like the way that it goes. So again, this goes back to like the idea of like information control. You might think that that's true,
or
unless you know the way that the church has actually done things, that you can get revelation, quote unquote revelation, to change through demand. But what do you have to say on that, Gerardo?
Well, there's so many examples, like the reversal of the November 15 policy, even just putting
a declaration too. How about the polygamy reversal? Right? It's the federal government bears down, starts putting our prophets in prison, starts seizing our assets. Oh, look, a revelation. And it's not a revelation to like predict something in the future. It's a revelation to rescind something in the past that's become problematic based on the federal government or citizen outrage. And again, with the reversal of the priesthood ban, the church's tax exempt status was possibly being threatened. There were universities that were protesting when they would play basketball or football against BYU. Like, we don't get revelation in this church. We respond to public outrage or federal government, protestation. And that's all revelations are these days. Other than that, what's a revelation? Even the proclamation on the family, number one, it has been canonized. Number two, wasn't it a legal brief that got developed and then turned into a declaration after it was drafted as a legal brief to provide a bolstering of our attempts to defeat same-sex marriage in the United States?
Yeah. I mean, that's the reason it was created.
Yeah.
So, and that's what it's used, literally what it's used for.
Yeah.
And I could make the argument that he just said that the exact sentence I think he said, correct me if I'm wrong, was speculation does not bring forth revelation. And so think about somebody who's in a faith crisis and they need revelation. They need an understanding of, something Joseph Smith did, and they're looking for a revelation. Where do people normally look to? They look to Mormon apologists
who are speculating.
It's their job to speculate. And by the way, I just want to read the definition of an apologist: is a reasoned argument or writing in justification of something, typically a theory or religious doctrine, is what the definition is. It is just a speculation of a theory that helps you kind of like feel more comfortable with something, in a religious doctrine or historically in the Mormon church. So for people to be able to feel like they have a place in this church, they have to look to speculators instead of going with like sometimes what the data says or what the actual historical record says. It's like this church would die if they actually followed that advice of no more speculation. This church would not function anymore, in my opinion.
That's true.
All right. Well, we've got one or two more clips and then we're done. This next clip, we've got some people waiting. So we're excited for those of you who are going to be joining us on the video chat. This next one is entitled Sister Renlund, New Feminist Icon with Hearts. Carah, I'm assuming.
Yes, you guys. There are actually a couple different really nice clips within this. And Sister Renlund, who is Elder Renlund's wife, obviously, I cut it out at the beginning of this clip because it was like 3 minutes long. But she talks about how when her husband was like going to med school and they had like a 3-year-old child, and she decided that she wanted to go to law school. And I was like, damn, Sister Renlund, that's like,
Wow.
Let's roll it.
Yeah.
Is that the clip we're about to see?
No, that's before she says that. And then I'm just setting up the clip because it was a little bit too long. But anyway, she starts talking about how she had to make a list of how she was doing too many things, too many like gender role things. Interesting. So that she would be able to attend law school. So that's why I called Sister Renlund a feminist icon.
All right. Let's roll the clip and see what she says.
That I did is I took a close look at some of the things I was doing and decided I'm not going to do them anymore. And I'm not going to feel guilty about them. I took out a pencil and paper and I wrote down some of the things I was no longer going to do and not feel guilty about. I'll tell you what was on that list. I mean, it started with ironing. Okay. Not going to feel guilty. My husband's shirts didn't look great. Don't look at me. I just said, I'm not going to feel guilty about this. I don't have time to do it. If it's important to my husband, he'll do it. Then I made a list of things that were not going to fall through the cracks, things only I could do, and I would be there to do them. Okay. I decided it didn't matter who fixed the food. If it was all frozen food out of the freezer, it didn't matter. We had food to eat. What did matter was that I was there to read story time for my daughter, and that we would have scripture. We'd read scriptures, we'd do a story, and we'd have prayer. That was important. I wouldn't miss that. I would always be at sacrament meeting, and I would accept a church calling. And I do my best with the time that I had. So there were certain things I said, I'm going to do these. It matters. This matters that I personally am the one that does it. It matters for me. It matters for our family. And there were other things that didn't. And I could tell you it was liberating once I wrote it down. But the caveat is you have to say, and not feel guilty about not doing it.
She's teaching women's lib 101. So in a Mormon context, obviously, of saying that I'm still going to put the church first in all of the ways. But I love how she said that she's putting her family first and like her education first and being a career woman potentially. I don't know what she did with her law degree, but that is some hyper rebellious stuff there, sister. So I thought that was pretty cool. I wanted to include it because here at Mormon Scoops, some people, they want pistachio flavor too. So we have to throw that in. It's just one of the many offerings. Pistachio is like the pro-Mormon flavor.
Yeah.
I love that for sure. That's really different from what I heard growing up, so
Definitely. Yeah.
I wish it was not just on Kaysville. They were saying this in General Conference.
Can you imagine if they over the pulpit at General Conference, they're like, wives, you don't have to iron and you don't have to cook
you don't have to
food
feel guilty about it.
And don't feel guilty about it. I mean, that really would be assaulting gender roles, and the church wants to make it really clear gender is eternal. And of course we genderify home chores, right?
Yeah.
And so
yeah,
but let's just say in good faith, Carah, you felt good about that.
Yeah, for sure. Like that is like a small win for somebody who's that like a wife of somebody that's that high in leadership saying that. Just want to make sure to highlight, the good things. And already people are getting mad at me for bashing pistachio. I used to work in not an ice cream shop, but actually a rice pudding shop. And our least popular flavor was pistachio. So it was the first thing that came to my mind.
All right.
It's data. Don't argue.
All right. Well, Sister Renlund, step up and give that talk at General Conference. We urge you to. And
She can't.
Why not?
Wives of apostle wives
Don't speak.
Don't speak at General Conference.
Oops. All right. Well, anyway, that's the clips we have for today. Thanks to our leaker or leakers who shared with us, because guess what? That talk is no longer available, but we have the full version available. If anybody wants to see it, we'll share it with you. And that's our show. And now we have the special segment of call-ins, where you, our devoted viewers and listeners, get to call in and share your opinion. So we're excited about that. And I kind of have to first invite our dear friend, Justin.
Yay.
Justin, unmute yourself really quick. And we told you about Justin is our Discord, one of the leaders of our new MormonStories Discord channel. Hey, Dustin.
Hi.
Dustin, how's it going?
Good. I have to first acknowledge the authority in the room, Carah, since she's the presiding president of the first presidency there.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So, let's get the respect. Go on with your comment.
There you go. Yeah, I just wanted to thank you for covering that topic about presiding, about the them doubling down on prophets like never being wrong and having special sight, because a lot of my friends now are like nuanced and they're like, you don't have to listen to everything, and it's just good to highlight that still is like the marching orders. That's one of the reasons why we have been running a program on the Discord channel called Never Mo Sunday School. And it's really cool because like I'm the only one that was former Mormon that's on the panel, but we have a panel of like all Never Mo's who are studying like the what you actually learn in Mormon Sunday School. But we're also going over a bunch of things that people have authoritatively said as prophets. Like one of the messed up things we're studying this Sunday is the Mormon concept of a pre-existence. And in that, we're saying, well, you also have prophets who said that some were less valiant, who were like mentally handicapped and stuff. And that's not great, but you need to keep that in mind anytime you're claiming to be infallible. So,
yeah, right on.
I love it. Carah, what do you think?
Yeah. If you have any kind of authoritarian structure that is just entrenched in dogma that can do a lot of harm to people while also serving people, the best way is letting the people who are served by that system speak up and saying, hey, I'm not okay with this, or hey, this hurts someone close to me. Going back to what the Black Student Union at BYU are trying to do. It takes small and simple measures of people within the church, outside of the church, like Mormon Scoops, Thursdays at 7 p.m. Just doing their best to keep the church accountable. So yeah, that's one great way. Everyone go join the Discord. The link is right there in the chat right now. So thanks so much, Justin.
And Justin, just really quick, for those who don't know what Discord is or why it's cool or how to use it, you want to give like a 30-second elevator pitch for why it's cool?
Yeah, sure. So I like to describe it like Thrive's done a really good job giving people places to come and show up and find community. The problem is Thrive's still expanding. They're doing a great job, but they're not everywhere yet. What's great about Discord is all the setup work you have to do to create a in-person group, you have to do once and maintain it once. And it's still a lot of work, but it's now accessible to people everywhere. If you have an internet connection, we have a lot of people who are Never Mo's who are finding support there because they've left a very highly Orthodox group, and just like deconstructing it within a Mormon context and seeing what we go through really helps them. But then also, if you are living in the middle of Provo, Utah, and everybody's Mormon and you're the only one who's out, you can come on and you can make friends. And it's unlike Reddit, it's unlike Facebook, because you're going to run into the same people again and again and make friends and form connections. So it's a really good way to build community digitally.
Yay. Thanks so much for taking the charge to be the mod on that. And so many people have stepped up to help moderate that and keep the community going and stuff. And I'm so excited. It's just like another good place to build community. Thanks so much.
Yeah, come by and say hi. Well, I mean, you did, but
I always do. I'm
else out there.
I check in when I can.
Oh, you do. John's always popping in and saying hi.
And Gerardo's going to be featured what, Monday?
Yes. Yes, Gerardo's going to be there on Monday. I think John is actually in the queue. John Sawyer, him and Gerardo are going to be on a panel. So I'll, come out.
Well, Justin, you have been a wonderful volunteer. You just volunteer your own time. You're not getting paid for this. You just care about our community and want to provide support, and all your fellow mods. So just a shout out to you,
You have the
all
best
your
mod.
fellow mods. There's over 600 members of the Discord channel last I looked.
There's always something going on. It's not like the church where you have to go to everything. Just show up, check it out. If it's of use, continue going. If not, that's cool too.
All right. Thanks, Justin. Thanks for checking in.
All right. Bye.
Take care. All right.
Thanks,
See ya.
Justin.
All right. Next we are going to have Lacey. Lacey, thanks for joining us, and welcome to Mormon Scoops.
Hey, oh, it's so fun to be on here. Yeah, so pretty much what I kind of wanted to mention as like I'm 18, so I'm
What?
yeah, and so just what I've noticed about like all these things, like with the Black students and the transgender students not getting the therapy that they need, just all those things where even if they are like in BYU and still part of the church and believing, where like in past generations, I feel like people will just like slowly put these things on the shelf and kind of like work with the church to make it more progressive. I feel like my generation, like if anything is coming at your mental health, I guess we're just more inclined to take a break from it. And so I feel like people will even fall further from being like trying to make it progressive to just like completely quitting and like cutting it all out. And so I don't know, I'm pretty optimistic about my generation, and I'm happy about that. But yeah, I feel like the whole route that this is going to take is going to be, I don't know, I think we expect everyone to get exponentially more progressive, but I think it's also just going to be an exponential amount of people just completely leaving.
Wow. Hot take. Let me ask a follow-up question though. What do you have to say if somebody heard that and they just take that response as like, oh, that's like Elder Holland when he was like, what kind of taffy pulling patty cake testimony is that? Like, you just take a break and you leave, right when you're 18, you don't push through, you don't actually stick it out. And I see what you mean by like the younger generation is like, nope, we out. Like, I don't have to put up with this BS. But if somebody were to say that, what would your response be, you think?
Here, let me think.
You put her on the
I mean, it's fair. Like, I don't know, especially like if you are more inclined to like cult like thinking or just anything very high demand, you're more likely to stick it out. But I don't know, it's a fair assumption to just, say that we're kind of like weak and quitting, but anything I feel like anything that costs our mental health is too expensive and is just, I don't know, it's like we're okay with it. It's like, yeah, I quit, but
yeah, maybe they're just more in tune knowing their worth.
Yeah.
I'm just curious. I'm so happy to have you here, Lacey. So are you comfortable sharing where you're calling from, or would you rather not? No pressure.
Oh yeah. I'm in Virginia.
Okay. That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're 18, like number one, when did you, what age did you lose your faith? And then at what age did you start listening to or viewing Mormon stories? How did that even happen? I'm just curious.
I was 16, so it was about a year and a half ago. And I think it was only about a year ago that I ever told anybody. I was too scared. I was using like burner YouTube accounts to watch Zelf on the Shelf and stories because I was so afraid anyone would see my name. So yeah, it's only been recent that I've been kind of like talking about it. But yeah, I was scared.
Are you able to, like, do you have any other family members that are in the same place as you, or are you the only one?
Yeah, so I'm the youngest of 7, and my sister and her husband just left, I think maybe almost a year ago. So that was super exciting because I finally had some support.
Nice.
Yeah.
And what has it meant to have kind of YouTube channels or, podcasts or whatever? I imagine you maybe felt alone for a while.
Oh yeah, it's everything to have just social media in general, just because like I was still going to church and things, and over time I became more vocal about my disagreements, but they just kind of shut it down. And then with COVID, like we stopped kind of getting together. So I lost more of my support group from like Young Women's and things like that. So yeah, it kind of fell out pretty quick, but also, yeah, just kind of, I'm trying to remember what you asked.
Do you worry that by leaving the church, you're leaving everything of value behind? Do you worry about that?
I do sometimes, just because it's always constantly reinforced to me that like people will say to me like, oh, Lacey, like you say you hate all these things about the church, but like, look at all the good in it. Like look at the support group that you have if you go to college in Utah and all that stuff like that. And it's like, I could be losing everything, but in the same way, it's like what I knew to be everything. I don't know. I guess just kind of rebuilding everything and learning what I was missing is just kind of like, oh, I'm not missing anything. It's just,
yeah. It's a big statement. That's good.
Well, how many of us who are listening, there are lots of comments coming in about how smart our fellow viewers and listeners think you are. Like, how many of us wish we figured it out at 16? Not because we hate the church or think that it always harmed us. I think many of us, I know Carah does, feels like the church, and I do, feels like the church was good for us in so many ways. But having said that, there's so many decisions you make when you're Orthodox in the church in terms of mission and marriage and kids and career and education and stuff. And there are just so many people that wish they'd figured it out when they were 16. So that says something about you, Lacey. So good job.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we'd love to have you back sometime to tell your story, but we're so glad you called.
Oh yeah, that'd be super cool. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks for calling in, Lacey.
All right, Lacey.
Yeah.
You take care, okay?
Yeah, thank you, you too.
All right, we'll see you soon. Thanks for joining us. All right. Let's go ahead and go to John Sawyer. He was the first to join us. Hey, John.
Hey, John. Hey, Carah. Hey, Gerardo. Great to be here. Awesome show tonight. So as a queer identifying person, I'm both a former evangelical of particularly potent hellfire and brimstone, particularly vehement homophobia that I experienced from a very young age, and ended up converting to the LDS Church at age 15, which was nicer in doctrine, if you will. But one of the things that I wanted to bring up, to Gerardo's comment earlier, is that the doctrine can be nicer. And for me, that was like a relief. I was like, oh, I wasn't being threatened with hellfire anymore actively, but the culture ignored my identity. And, I'm reading books about homosexuality being equated to second with murder and those kind of things, which left a very, harmful impact on me. Long story, ended up, leaving activity in the church after the November 15th policy debacle. And that was very difficult because there was so much about the church that I loved. And there were so many people in the church that actually helped me to be able to come to the point where I was able to say that I'm a queer identifying person. And so I just wanted to put that out there. I think the other thing that I wanted to mention is, I'm going to be on a panel with Gerardo on our Discord server on Monday night. But as a result of my experiences with high demand religion, I've started studying education policy. I'm in a PhD program at the University of Colorado Boulder, and I'm looking at the intersection of education policy and anti-discrimination law. And I'm particularly looking at religious exemptions and separation of church and state, and how all that plays into sort of the politics of religion. And I think sometimes in like post-Mormon or ex-fundamentalist circles, we can lose sight of how powerful religion still is in America. Not that that's wrong, but there is a strong allegiance of the religious right with groups like the LDS Church, with groups like evangelicalism and all its many varieties, with conservative Catholics and others. And I think, you know, the gender affirming therapy ban at BYU is just a perfect example of how enmeshed the church is with political activism, particularly conservative political activism. And as Gerardo mentioned earlier, I think there's a long way to go in the court system and in policy to be able to really affirm individuals. Like, you can believe all day long that marriage is between a man and a woman and have your religious doctrines, but when it comes to harming individuals, that's where the line has to be drawn, and the courts and advocates and activists need to get involved to address these things. So thank you all.
Yeah, I love that.
Nice.
Yeah, I was thinking, so when we were playing Elder Renlund's clip about how he feels like the LDS Church is a better place, you know, for LGBT people, I was thinking exactly what you're saying about evangelical groups and even the other groups like Catholic Church, where they're less organized and there's not a set doctrine of beliefs. There's not like a people, you know, person on top, like who sets doctrine. It gets a little bit more confusing and sometimes harder to accept for, you know, people from these groups, because they don't have like a set of guidelines like the LDS Church. If you find a homophobic person in the LDS Church, I mean, you're probably gonna have a pretty good you're probably going to be successful at maybe changing their views a little bit once that you show them a few quotes from apostles.
Yeah.
But you don't have that in other churches.
And you have abusive. I shared a story on another podcast of I was at a Pentecostal Bible college and was actually subjected to exorcisms and what they called deliverance prayer to try to cast gay demons out of me, which was physical and psychological abuse that's taken a lot of therapy over the years to work through. And, you know, you don't find those things in the LDS Church. It does not mean that the doctrine and that the culture is not harmful. I'm just saying that there's a little bit of a distinction between some of the really acute harm that happens in some organizations that may not happen as much in the LDS Church, though I concede that it's still there.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
John, this isn't your first time to be calling in. This is your second time to call in, right?
Yeah, and I've been watching you, John, since like 2008 or something. So I'm a long time person. And actually, your podcast in some ways contributed me to getting rebaptized at one point back when you were having people like Terrell Givens on and Richard Bushman, and I was really getting into kind of the nuanced Mormon phase, and it's just part of my journey. So I've appreciated watching your journey over the years, and I've chosen to stay on church records for personal reasons, not anything to do with fear, but just for personal reasons. But I'm no longer would call myself a believer in the church or its doctrines. So,
well, you're a smart cookie, so please join us anytime, John.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Good luck with graduate school.
Thanks so much, and you all come to Discord. It's a great community. So.
Thank you. We'll do it.
For the shout out.
All right. Thanks, John.
Bye-bye.
All right. I think next in line is the Maven. Maven, of course, is one of the kind of co-hosts now of Mormonism Live with Bill Reel and Radio Free Mormon. That show, I think, appears at 6:20 p.m. Mountain Time every Wednesday. We intentionally never broadcast on Wednesday night out of solidarity, love, and support with Mormonism Live. And Maven is a new sort of co-host. So Maven, thanks for joining us.
Co-host. I do typically am the behind the scenes person, but they do invite me to pop on. As I hope it's okay that I bring this up, but just the quote, Carah, that you shared, or just bringing up Sister Renlund. I wasn't even gonna come on because I came on last week, but I was just like, I have to. So if it's okay, I don't know so if this is visible, this was a quote
so amazing. She's adding content to our own presentation.
It was already up from our episode last night, and so I just hadn't closed the tab even, so that's why it's there. But this was Sister Renlund saying, one thing I've always felt strongly about is that there's no one way to be an LDS versus woman. Each has a right to personal revelation and is expected to use that. It should be personal, and we shouldn't let other people's comments shake our direction. I think women are particularly susceptible to that. And on our episode last night, we had a guest who is still an active member. She was the one that found this quote, and it was this and just, a few other things that we brought up just as pain points for us growing up in the church and trying to do and live the doctrine the way that we've been told. And so when the church will hold up Sister Renlund with quotes like you shared, Carah, and quotes like this, I mean, on the one hand, they're great because they are more feminist, but on the other hand, they're very, very gaslighty for those of us that, didn't. I mean, it was the other guest that got married quickly like she was supposed to, had children right away, even though she didn't feel ready, because you're not supposed to delay children, and not work outside the home, and just the struggles and the consequences that come from that. So, so I don't know. I feel bad. I'm not trying to plug our episode last night, but it just was relevant. And so I just felt like I wanted to chime in about that. I'm really glad for the younger generation that they're catching on to this better, and they're disregarding a lot of the more harmful messages that we got. But that also doesn't mean that that we didn't get those, us women that are a bit older. You know what I mean?
Right.
I was going to bring up a video of Ezra Taft Benson, but he very clearly says women should be in the home and they don't belong outside. So Sister Renlund was definitely in the generation that got that, and sometimes I feel like it's actually a matter of privilege, when you are wealthier and when you are more connected like she is to higher ups, then the rules just don't necessarily apply to you as much. That's all I wanted to share.
Wow.
Yeah. That's a good perspective. Thanks. And you don't want to plug it, but I do. I just wanted to make sure to leave.
I feel bad.
No, it's good. I can't wait to listen to it. The role of women in the church with Bill and RFM, Mormonism Live, episode 64. I posted that in the show notes and in the chat just now. So everyone go check out their episode.
Yeah, we don't have a scarcity model Mormon Stories podcast. We think a rising progressive and post-Mormon tide lifts all ships. So I love Bill and RFM and you, and we want them to succeed, and we do better when they do better, and vice versa. And most importantly, everyone who needs support does better when there are multiple voices. So my question, Maven, is how do we hire you in the Open Stories Foundation without making Bill Reel super mad? Is there a way to hire you and keep Bill Reel happy? That's my question. What would you say?
I'm sure there is. I'm sure if we think really hard, I'm sure we can figure something out.
All right. Well, don't let Bill Reel get mad at me. But we want some synergy here.
The synergy is coming. Marco said, I'm still waiting for RFM and Carah to chat with each other. Not only does RFM call me on the phone every once in a while when he goes on a walk, so I've chatted with him many times.
Does he call you too, Maven? He calls me at 7 a.m.
Yeah.
Oh, not at 7 a.m.
Yeah. So I make time to talk to RFM, but I am going to be on Mormonism Live. I think March 16th. I'm going to throw it out. I think it's somewhere around there.
Coming up.
Yeah. So the synergy is happening, John. So Maven's on our show. I'll be on their show in March.
And Maven, it's so wonderful to have another female voice in the Mormon, post-Mormon universe. So we adore you and keep up the good work. And thanks so much for all you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Maven.
All right.
Thanks for having me on.
All right. Take care, Maven. Okay. Next, he's been waiting patiently. He was the second to join us. We have a Crisco Bike. I assume that's not your legal name. Is that true?
It's how everybody in these chats know me. My real name's Christian, but everyone knows me as Crisco. I have to do a shout out to my cousin Carah. So absolutely love you. Love everything about this. She is the shining light of our family. So it's awesome. And I can't believe you made me follow Maven. There's no following Maven. So
do your best.
I'm devastated. She's brilliant and amazing. But yes. No, I wanted to call with a couple really fast things. Since you all were so impressed with the Hubble telescope comment, it's important to remember that when the Hubble telescope was first activated, it actually had to be repaired because it was dramatically nearsighted. So it couldn't even see far away. And it was an extremely expensive repair, very difficult to do. So yeah, lots of reasons why the Hubble telescope analogy is actually pretty spot on. So
Right.
hopefully keep using it.
And there
Shout
was
out
no
to Denver Snuffer and
Yeah.
saving the restoration.
There you go.
Was there any like Hubble telescope apologetics of why that was, or did they just like go in and change it? Were they like, it's not always perfect, you have to see it through a certain lens, or were they just like,
Well,
let's get to work and actually fix it?
The process to create one of those lenses is actually insanely difficult, and it's one of the most precise operations that there is in all of engineering. So it's actually very common to screw up telescope lenses. However, you would hope that the Hubble telescope, being the most expensive telescope ever invented by man, would be one that they would put extra effort into getting right. But if you've seen any of the photos, they got it right. So anyways, but no, John, I'm in case it's not clear, I'm very interested in science. I'm often the one that's like, let's do a episode on environmentalism in the church. The last talk I actually gave in church was the last Sunday before the lockdown began for COVID. And I got permission to actually speak on the church's stance on environmentalism. And so I had to research all the quotes from all the brethren for the entire time the church was founded about our obligation to care for the environment, and I even look into, well, why have they stopped talking about it? And there's some really interesting stuff there. But anyways, no, the real reason I called, though, was this whole thing we've been talking about prophets and just why can't they give us clear answers? Why can't they pray and just settle a lot of these weird debate things, come out and be like, the Lord has spoken to me. Yes, LGBTQ people, God has made them that way. He loves them equally. Let's get this straight. Climate change is real. We have to take care of the planet that God gave us, et cetera, et cetera. Why can't they get these things right? And honestly, it was probably the biggest thing that broke my shelf and drove me out of the church. I just couldn't take the insanity anymore. So,
all right.
Yeah, what's the point of a prophet sometimes? I know, it's a little bit rough.
Yeah.
Well, I would just say you guys have unrealistic expectations.
That's what Keith Erickson says.
Yeah, I should have never
Seriously, that's what he says.
should have never been taken to primary at 3 years old and sang that song. All my expectations. It was my fault for attending primary and singing that song.
It's called blame reversal, where you get blamed. House always wins. Don't you say that, Carah?
Yeah.
House always wins.
Yeah.
Well, Crisco Bike, thanks for joining us. We always love your comments. You're one of our most faithful commenters and supporters. So, and a family member of Carah's is a family member of ours. How's that?
Yeah. Yeah, his wife's name is Sarah Burrell, and so my name is Carah Burrell. It's literally one letter difference.
One letter off.
One little like hook of a calligraphy thing different. So, love you, Christian. Thanks for always participating in this. Just being a good supporter.
Oh, and anybody that ever gets called into the BYU Honor Code office, just say that you live the honor code and the law of chastity, as well as Joseph Smith set the example for, and then just stop talking and see what they say.
And moonwalk out of there.
Oh,
exactly.
All right, Christian, thanks for joining us. Please join us again soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, brother. All right, we've got 3 more, and then we're going to be ending. Jody has been waiting patiently. Jody, where are you calling from?
I am calling from Walworth County, Wisconsin, and I learned the significance of that because I'm a Nevermole, and I learned the significance that from the John Larson episode where he talked about Beaver Island, and he talked about Walworth County where help me with the word, Strangites are?
Strangites, yeah.
Strangites, and they're about 30 miles from me, and so come summer when the snow is melted, I'm going to take a little trip over there and see what that's all about.
Cool.
Fun. I love it. I love the survey we did recently on YouTube where we discovered that half of our YouTube viewers have never been Mormon. Tell us why in the heck you watch Mormon stories, Jody. What are you doing?
What am I doing? What I get so much out of it is a number of things. First of all, the long the long stories that people tell when it's a 4, 5, 6 hours, and it's so respectful and you really go in depth. So it's not a 3-minute soundbite. Tell me as quick as you can your whole life story, but it's like it's really listening and caring and reflecting what people are saying. And I think we see this on the news that people don't listen to each other. And I like that example of listening, and acknowledging people's discussion and acknowledging people's experiences. I also really get a lot of the intersectionality between that discusses religious tradition and then the oppression of people based on gender, based on sexuality, based on race.
Right on,
And
yeah.
I think that's a microcosm for what we see in our entire country. So I can look at some of the systematic things that you talk about coming out of the Mormon tradition, and then I can reflect that in some of the other systems that we have here in the United States. And that has really helped me kind of think through a lot of these prejudices that we do have in our society, and then ways that we can maybe address them. For example, I didn't know about the the Title IX exemptions for all these universities, and that really bothers me that my tax dollars and the tax dollars of people who are being oppressed are going to pay for universities that are allowed to discriminate. And so the next day I called my elected representatives and I said, hey, I don't want this
Good for you.
to happen. So it's giving me steps to take power for the values that I believe. And the third is it's such an important part of U.S. history, the Mormon tradition, and the historical aspects are so profound. And so a couple years ago, a friend and I went and visited Nauvoo, and it was an incredible experience to see the history there, but also the community of Christ and the LDS and the dynamic between the two, would you say, denominations on how they share that area. There's tension, but there's also that sharing piece. And so that's very interesting to me. And then I'm part of Justin's Sunday school, NOMO Sunday school. So, we were having some really good discussions about looking deeper at what the Mormon tradition is, because it's so unique and it seems to be so based in a lot of what was going on in U.S. history at the time. And that's not a tradition that I grew up in. So those are some of the reasons why, as a Nevermo, I've started listening, and I just can't. I keep coming back. I am, as I mentioned, I do go to the Sunday school, so I'm on the Reddit, and I'm Gen X. I'm closer in age to you, John, than I am Gerardo and Carah. So I just want to encourage people of Gen X. There's a number of us on there too, so people shouldn't be concerned if they feel like, hey, I might be older than the crowd. There's a number of us there, and we're going to have for all of us, we're going to have a board game night on Sunday. And
this is on the Discord channel.
This is on the Discord channel. We're going to be playing virtually. We're going to be playing Uno, code names, and other games, board games of people's choosing. And I'm going to be hosting that. And it's on this coming Sunday, 5:30 Pacific time. So that's 6:30 Utah time. But everybody is welcome to come and play some board games.
So Jody, a couple things I'm learning. Number one is you're telling us that we're three of Mormonism's greatest ambassadors to the world. Is that right? me and Gerardo and Carah are literally Mormon ambassadors to the world. Is that true?
I think you're great educators. I don't know about not missionaries. Educators, yes. Missionaries, maybe not.
Jody, you're a true intellectual. Like, you are a real thoughtful person. Are you anywhere near Lake Wobegon? Are you near Lake Wobegon?
Well, Lake Wobegon is made up, but my mother grew up in the fictional area, which is Lake Wobegon, which Garrison Keillor would talk about. So that was my family roots. So unlike the pioneers of Utah, which you talk about, yes, my heritage is Lake Wobegon.
And did you grow up in a religious tradition? Were you Lutheran, or what was
I was Catholic.
Catholic, okay.
Catholic, and then I was after I went to 8 years of Catholic school. When I graduated from university, I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Ukraine. And yeah,
Whoa.
so that's very close to my heart right now.
Wow.
And then that's where I first met Mormon missionaries, because there were Mormon missionaries in Ukraine at the time.
Wow.
And that was my first exposure. But I haven't had a whole lot of exposure in Wisconsin. I don't know what the statistics are, but it's not something we hear a lot about. So that's also a curiosity of mine.
Well, I have a new bucket list item, and it's to give Jody a hug and shake her head. If Jody wants a hug, give her a hug. If not, shake her hand. That's a new bucket list of mine.
Thank you. Can I give a shout out to Gerardo?
Thank you.
I want to tell you
What do you
something.
like about Gerardo? What do you like about that guy?
Well, I'm going to tell you why, because I work in at a university, and I work in international student immigration. I'm the PDSO. He knows what that means. The rest won't. And on your story that you shared with us about your personal journey, you were I've been in this field over 20 years, and you're the first person who explained totally accurately the immigration consequences and processes that international students go through, and the requirements that they have to face on their campus in order to remain in their visa status. So I was just so impressed and blown away by that. So
Thank
I just
you.
wanted to give you a shout out, and I was like, wow, if this guy can talk about this so accurately. I mean, I'm always impressed with the things and you know them so well, because you can explain that so well.
Thank you. Thanks a ton. That means a lot to me.
All right.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Well, Jody, you're a delightful human. Please join us again anytime. We're honestly moved and touched that our program would mean something to you, and you do us such a credit and an honor to be a listener and to join us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jody.
And Carah doesn't get a shout out. Carah doesn't get a shout out.
I think we talked on Discord the other night.
Yes, we did. I met Carah the other night. So
We're old friends.
she's the one who gave me the break, because see, I'm older too. So it's like, I'm on TV now. I feel a little nervous. And so Carah was there, and I'm like, I'm talking to a celebrity. And so you gave me the strength to call in.
You're giving me the strength to keep going. That was like the biggest. That's like a Red Bull. If your comments were Red Bull and caffeine to my system right now. Like, that was so incredible the way you just described the value of Mormon Stories podcast. Like,
Jody, you're better than a taco to Carah, which is saying. Wait, did I go too far, Carah?
I eat Taco Bell 6 days a week. One night off tonight. Jody is filling my tummy with all the happiness.
Thank you. Well, you take care, and maybe we'll see some of you at a game night sometime.
Yes.
I love board games, so I'd love to join. Thanks,
right.
Jody. Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Jody. Jody's
You're
good
the
soon.
best.
Take
Bye.
care.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
I want to bear my testimony of making this a call-in show. This is like,
It's kind of fun, right?
yeah. I mean, the only thing I have to compare it to is like a Wise Guys open mic night of comedians, or like testimony meeting, and both of those are massive failures. And this is like exceeding all my expectations.
I'm just waiting for some troll to call in and start
Yeah.
saying profanities or awful things. But so far,
It's
we're
been
100%.
great. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been great.
People don't want to show their face too often.
Yeah. As trolls.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's good to hear. All right. Well, we've got two humans left. Zach, you've been waiting patiently. Zach, if you want to share, where are you calling from?
I hope you can hear me here. I haven't used this setup in quite a while, but I'm calling from Austin, Texas, deep in the heart of Texas, RFM's old stomping ground. Yes, yes, sir.
Gig 'em.
Yes, sir. And so I appreciate your show tonight. It was a lot of good stuff. The contradictory statements about the prophet and all these other things, it got me thinking. I learned that last year a Mormon science fiction author named Dave Wolverton died, and he's notable in Star Wars circles because he wrote The Courtship of Princess Leia, which is one of the more popular expanded universe books. And it got me thinking about Star Wars, and there's a lot of Star Wars metaphors that get used in words, the priesthood and the force, and Spencer W. Kimball or Yoda was based on Spencer W. Kimball. That was a common one that you hear in the mission field all the time. But it got me thinking about, canon and what happens when you have a long-running series, especially a science fiction series that started maybe back in the 60s or 70s before they really thought about keeping track of all your lore and keeping it all cohesive. And so hearing about these seemingly contradictory statements and hearing different people in the church and leadership not quite keeping a cohesive through line on the doctrine, this is what happens when you have a franchise that goes on for a really long time and it gets passed around to different authors. And there isn't one person, a lore keeper, who kind of is like, no, you can't talk about that because that contradicts this thing that was said back in, episode 2 in 1960. And so I see that a lot in the church, and it's a very human problem. But anyway, so.
That is such a good analogy and comparison. That is so good. I'm just thinking of comic book guy from The Simpsons who would just call BS on all of the different ways that the different authors and franchisers are not being consistent with the actual story is supposed to be told.
So actually, Ezra Taft Benson once said in his 14 Traits of the True Prophet. Yeah.
Exactly. I knew you would completely just go there with me.
Are you saying that Mormonism needs a Kevin Feige? Is that what you're saying?
Quite possibly. They need
isn't he the guy with the Marvel with the Marvel universe?
Well, Kevin Feige. Yeah. He's kind of kept them. He's kept them on. He's kept them on track. Well, George Lucas was very smart because back in the 90s they hired one person that was in charge of keeping all the lore straight, and so all of those novels, hung together. But I think the church should have followed George Lucas's example there and hired a lore master.
Yeah.
Is it okay if I flag the nerd alert? Is there a time?
Absolutely. You go for it. Go for it.
Yeah.
I'm pulling the nerd flag.
Can I?
But that's the thing. But that's the thing. There's so many, you think of Orson Scott Card and all these nerds who have come out of Mormonism. I think there is something that naturally fits, that naturally, helps Mormon science fiction authors kind of gravitate towards, science fiction, because we're exposed to lore at a very young age. And so fantasy and science fiction is just a natural fit for us that grow up in the church.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, that's a really fun comment. And Zach, thanks so much for joining us from Austin. Are you keeping it weird in Austin? Weird.
Absolutely.
Are you glad that Elon Musk and Tesla have all relocated down there?
I don't know. We'll see how the tax situation goes. So.
Well, thanks for calling in, Zach. It's great to have you. Hope you call in again.
Thanks very much. Have a good one.
It's great to have you.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. Well, we've got one more person to join us, and then we're going to call it a night. And that's going to be K.R. Mello. K.R. Mello is in the house. Where are you joining us from?
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right. So, my name is Carmelo. I'm joining from Bakersfield, California.
Ooh, California is in the house.
California. It's nice in here. Well, I'm first of all, I've been listening to you guys for quite a while now. I've had my fall away, with the church about close to 3 years ago. There's a divorce too, all that good stuff. But one of the main points that really, and it's also kind of interesting to me to hear how many people call the channel or go on MormonStories from BYU, Idaho, because that's where I graduated. I did my undergraduate at BYU, Idaho. And that name just keeps coming back and back and back. And I have many of my friends that I went to BYU, Idaho, who basically are almost in the same situation I am right now, divorced, not going to church, etc. It's crazy to hear that. And I know Gerardo went there, and Zelf on the Shelf and all that. Anyways, I think my main thought that I had tonight And I want to be quick, just not to take your guys' time, but I remember how much of a starstruck experience it was for me to meet general authorities when I first. So I'm from Uruguay. That's where I'm from. I was born and raised in Uruguay, and I was called on my mission to Salt Lake City South. So that was part of my story too. So when I went to Utah, and I remember one time there was an event called Day of Celebration where Gordon B. Hinckley was part of it. And I remember I had Gordon B. Hinckley about 10 feet away from me, and it really felt like I was in God's presence. It was such an experience at that time. Then later on, I met Richard G. Scott. Later on, I shook hands too with Elder Uchtdorf. And it was such an experience at that time, right? Back when I was still in the church, meeting those celebrities, meeting those superhuman type of people, you know. And then once you start, and in South America and Latin America, you don't learn everything. You get a very whitewashed version of everything. They teach you about the Lamanites. They teach you about how the prophets are these perfect people that are next to God, you know.
Yeah.
And then the more you start reading about their quotes and the things that they've said in the past and the things that they have said in general conference and books and things like that, you really start deconstructing them, you know, say, hey, what are these guys even talking about? And I think bringing them down from the pedestal has been a very interesting experience to me, you know, and big part of what really made me lose faith in the church, you know, you're taught to, you know, like what you guys were speaking a minute ago, follow the prophet, follow the prophet, follow the prophet. But then, you know, it's like, well, I don't want to follow people that have said those things or showed those things, you know, taught discrimination. I remember MormonStories episode about Ezra Taft Benson. I remember being a child during the time Ezra Taft Benson was the prophet, and, you know, he was the prophet, so I worshiped that guy. And then you start reading all those things about, you know, his anti-communism and Birch Society and all those kind of things. And you're like, wow, that was the guy that I used to think was a prophet, you know, and so on. So anyways, I think that was interesting about tonight, you know, when you were listening to those quotes, when people were saying, you know, on one side they're saying, well, you got to follow the prophet, doesn't matter what, he would never lead you astray. And then on the other hand, you have some other guys saying, well, you know, yeah, you have to listen to the prophet, but, you know, you don't have to follow the prophet. It's like, come on, guys, you got to make up your mind. You can't have it both ways. You know, it's got to be one way or the other.
Carmelo, what was the big thing that knocked off your testimony off its block? What was what started it all? Are you able to share?
Well, sure. I mean, I had some personal issues, you know, and I think when I needed the most support from the church walked away from me. And I think that's what they really lost me. You know, I mean, my family joined the church in South America when I was about 9 years old, you know, so I did spend my whole life in the church. I spent my whole life serving missions, Salt Lake City, many callings, Sunday school, I mean, you name it. And there was a couple of things where I found myself at odds with the church, and you know, it was really difficult. And I think the moment when I needed the church the most, the church, you know, walked away from me. So
Sorry.
and then as you start learning more, you know, like I said, when you grow up in South America, and Gerardo's from Mexico, seems like his whole life he was really into the church and all that, so he probably studied it better than me. But I remember in Salt Lake City on my mission, that's the first times when I heard such things as the peepstone, you know, the Adam God theory. I didn't even had any idea that Joseph Smith was a polygamist until I went on my church, on my mission, you know.
Yeah.
So walking down the streets of Salt Lake City and having anti-Mormons yelling at you or talking to you is like, hey, your prophet was a polygamist. And you're like, no way, that's bullshit. You know?
Is that what you said as a missionary?
No, I didn't say that as a missionary. Nursing is another great consequence of leaving the church. I got really into it. And cigars. But anyways, you know, there are so many things that I never heard about. And then when I was on my mission, I heard them, and, you know, and then somebody teaches you the apologetics for it. It was like, oh yeah, he was a polygamist, but look at this, the Lord commands that when he needs it, blah blah blah. So you learn that, and I defended that with all I had. But then when you really start thinking about it, and also when you start meeting people from other ideas and other religions and open your mind, and you really start thinking that there are better reasons to judge people than whether they drink or they smoke or they're
Drink coffee.
LGBTQ. There's we're all different people. We're all who we are, and
Yeah.
and any idea, religion or group that teaches you to discriminate against other people, it's not worth being followed.
Yeah.
They got to teach you to love people and so we all can be happy, and be who we are.
Yeah.
But anyways, I think this whole thing that tonight and about deconstructing the prophet, like there's this guy that I have to follow, and if he says something, I say amen. It's not true. There's the so many times that we've seen the church flip-flop between things based on social pressure or any kind of threat or anything, bad publicity, so anyways. And I've been joining the Discord group too, and I mean I've been watching you guys for a long time, so yeah, love the show.
Well, it's so awesome to have you. Hey, I have to ask you, Carmelo, how does it feel to kind of see Latino representation on Mormon Stories podcast?
I think it's huge because some of the biggest, the whole Lamanite thing is, oh my God, it's once you really, and I think that's when you're in the church and you're, I guess, let me put this word out there, but when the indoctrination is so strong, you don't dare to doubt it. You don't dare to, you don't dare to look at it from a doubting perspective. You always look at it, even when you have questions, you look at it from a faith. There's somebody that quoted like, oh, the Egyptologist guy, right? I start with the question, and my first thought is, how do I make this fit the church? You train to think that way. How do I make this doubt fit my faithful view and not make me doubt the church? That's how you think of it. But then when you for the first time ever in your life, you're able to say, hey, maybe this is not true, or how about I want to think that this is not true. It's a dangerous thought, but when you finally get to do that, and I guess going back to the whole Latino thing, Lamanites, Book of Mormon being the origins of the Americas, and I mean, and I'm sorry again, but man, when you start seeing how much bullshit that is, like you deconstruct it, and you really start seeing it for what it is. So having Latino representation is great because when the church goes and preaches to people in other countries, they don't preach what we know. And in the whole world, to be honest, preach my gospel. There's nothing in preach my gospel. They don't talk about I don't know if there's a new version, but when I came right in the transition between preach my gospel and the old lessons, there's nothing in there. It doesn't talk about polygamy. It doesn't talk about a seer stone. It doesn't talk about anything. You're teaching people a whitewashed lie.
Yeah.
The other day I was thinking about my mission. There was one thing I did on my mission, and wow, when I look back, it's horrible. We did this thing that we call Pray Now. So basically what we would do is we would teach an investigator, say, hey, here's a baptismal date. And if they said no, they say, oh, I don't know. Okay, let's pray about it right now. And God will give you an answer right now.
I did that too.
And we would kneel down and we will pray and we will be on our knees until a person got an answer from God. And
I was really surprised because you know how Jim Bennett says that. I mean, I love Jim Bennett, but there's a few arguments that I don't super agree with him. One of them is saying that he says that the LDS church is the only church who teaches to pray about what you're being taught and ask God if it's true. Stephen Hassan talks about
not really,
like the Moonies gave him that invitation, exact same invitation when he was being indoctrinated. They told him, pray to God to ask if what we're teaching you is true.
Yeah.
So I think.
And I love the fact that when you watch those videos, about when we think our testimonies are so special, right?
Yeah.
But then you watch a video with persons from 50 different religions sharing their testimony and how the Holy Ghost told them that their church is true. Like, oh, then we're all true. Let's just be who we are, and be happy with it.
Yeah.
We don't have to convince other people to be like us, But anyways, and I remember we were having a mission conference where we discussed the pray now, and the president was really pushing it. And one sister shook her head. She was from Fiji. And he's like, "What's going on, sister?" And she said, "That sounds a lot like manipulation."
Wow.
He actually said that. And she got stink eye from, 300 missionaries in the room, like, "Oh my God, how dare you say that? That is horrible." And she, people were like, "Shh, shh, 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 shh." So, I guess I think she like later got called into a room to speak with the president, for
Wow.
saying it. But she said it. She literally said, and you know what? Today I'm like, good for you. Because that's exactly what it was. That's
Yeah.
exactly what it was.
All
That's
right.
awesome.
Well,
Using
Carmelo, it is so lovely to have you call in. You're a smart dude, and we're honored that you follow or listen or watch Mormon Stories. And
BYU Idaho graduate, man. We're smart people.
True.
well, good luck, and congratulations for figuring out what's true for you. And we wish you a happy, healthy life, and we hope you'll call back in again another time.
Awesome.
Your
Thank
show.
you, guys.
All right. Thanks, Carmelo. You take care. All right.
Everybody. Bye-bye.
All right, see you, brother. All right, guys. Well, we did it. We did our first Mormon Scoops episode in Studio 2 with a 3-camera shot and the PowerPoint presentation with Jen monitoring comments. What do you think, Gerardo? What do you think?
I feel bad for Jen.
Yeah.
I mean, we've gone long. It's 10:30.
Is it 10:30? Holy moly! I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Kara, what'd you think?
I loved it.
Yeah?
I'm so happy with this setup. I'm so happy that everyone that we have this amazing group of people that just are always in the chat, and that we know that when we turn on these cameras and we live stream that you guys are going to be there. So you guys have my heart, and I just love you guys so much for tuning in. This is just so much fun. And I hope that we had some good commentary, some good calls, and this was well worth your time.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you, Kara, for coming up with this idea of Mormon Scoops. I want to thank you, Gerardo, for joining us, for being part of the Trinity, being part of the Mormon Stories first presidency. Kara, you're awesome. Jen, you're awesome.
Yeah.
and viewers and listeners, you're awesome. So
Jen is the Holy Ghost.
Jen is the Holy Ghost.
She's in the darkness in the background. You can't actually see her, but I can feel her.
We feel her presence.
Yeah.
Anyway, listen, listeners and viewers, we're just trying new formats. We want to reach as many people as we can. We want to entertain you. We want to inform you. We just want to shine light and truth wherever we can. So please let us know if you like this format, if you hate this format, if you want to see us tweak the format. Some of these changes we made are in response to your feedback. We tried to make it a little bit less snarky, a little bit less irreverent, a little, we separated the cameras out so we're not all crunched together on the same camera. Maybe you like it better, maybe you like it worse. We covered a lot of content. If you guys think we should cover less content, we'd love to hear that. If you think we went too long, we'd love to hear that. But most importantly, we just want to keep providing you valuable content. So share us your feedback if you can. And most importantly, just thanks to everyone who stepped up this past year to support the Open Stories Foundation. We couldn't have brought on Gerardo without you. We couldn't have brought on Kara without you. We couldn't have brought on Jen without you. You help pay for Brooklyn. You help pay for Jennifer and just this amazing equipment, cameras, lighting. It's all because of you, even our rent. So in theory, our rent. So if you value this content and you're not able to support us right now, if you like to see Kara dancing a jig and you want to see that dancing continue, if you think Gerardo has the best hair in post-Mormonism and you want to see more of it, then please join our supporters and become a monthly contributor. You can go to MormonStories.org, click on the donate button. $10 a month, $20 a month, $50 a month, $100 a month, whatever you can afford. We're tax deductible in the US. We're fully transparent in our finances. And every dollar you spend goes to Kara's makeup and hair, goes to Gerardo's gel, and it goes to this lighting and everything to Jen.
John, sometimes you act like we have like a lighting rent we have to pay. Like the lighting electrician man's going to come in if we don't pay him. It's like we paid for the lighting.
No,
come up with a different example.
The light bulbs, oh man,
they burn off all the
Kara's
time.
undermining our donor pledge. pledge.
I'm not. I'm just like, I think the people know that we paid for the lighting by now.
Okay. Well,
Well, we're always buying lights. Like we're
Okay.
buying, like
Maybe a
we
little
just bought John Larson some lights, and we're getting equipment for
That's
Simon
true.
Southerton. And
Not
there's
this
that
lighting,
new
other
project
lighting.
that we're buying.
Yeah. Yeah. So Carah, quit
Stuff for?
undermining our pitch.
Sorry. Just don't point to these lights. And also, Jen, do you want to be on camera at all? Do you want to be on camera?
Oh, okay.
All right. I just want to, female representation, all that stuff. I didn't want to be like hogging the spotlight.
Well, anyway, if you want, we've got this new series on science versus Mormonism with Simon Southerton. We've got the John Larson episodes. We're trying to help John Larson get set up. We've got some work to do on that, but a John Larson episode is in the works and will be in the works every month. We've got lots of cool things coming up. So please become a monthly supporter of Mormon Stories and the Open Stories Foundation, and we'll keep bringing you valuable content to make you happy and to provide you with informed consent and support for healing, growth, and community beyond a faith crisis. So thanks to everyone for your support. Thanks for joining us. Send us your feedback. Thanks, Gerardo. You're awesome. Thanks, Carah.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, Jen. And we'll see you guys all again very soon on another episode. Oh, yeah. And of course, Margie episodes. Don't forget the Thrive Stories series.
I'm just trying to give, there's other examples of where the money goes besides lights. Margie, Simon Southerton, we got to pay Gerardo, John Larson,
Carah,
Jen.
Yeah.
Yeah, the team is expanding all because of the support, because Mormon Stories had the best year ever last year. So if we want to keep everything rolling, the good times rolling, we got to keep having the donations. Thank you very much.
We're looking into expanding into other languages. So, right?
To be continued.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, everyone. You guys take care. Have a good night. And we'll see you guys all again soon on another episode of Mormon Stories Podcast. Bye, everybody.